Chapter 1, Not Heaven, Not Hell. In a bustling market, a small pharmacy stood tucked between stalls and chatter. From its doors, a black-haired boy walked out, a paper bag of supplies in his hand. "Why do prices keep rising practically every day?" he muttered, sighing as he looked at the receipt. As he turned the corner, something caught his eye: a child suddenly startled by a hissing stray cat. The kid stumbled backward, straight onto the road. The sharp blast of a car horn shattered the air. Tires screeched. The car was too fast. Without thinking, the boy sprang forward. He grabbed the child with all his strength and yanked him away from the road. The kid landed safely on the curb. But the boy, just a moment too late, stumbled. The car hit him. He opened his eyes. He was now standing in a vast, majestic hall. At the far end sat an old man on a throne. In front of him stood the same black-haired boy, unharmed, yet the memory of the car's impact lingered. He could still feel it. The deceleration. The pain. It hadn't been instant. It had taken a few long, terrifying seconds for life to slip away. The old man watched him patiently, sympathy in his gaze. After a pause, he spoke. "You died." The blunt words pulled the boy out of his daze. Crude as they were, there was something comforting about the tone. The boy let out a sigh and nodded slightly. "May I ask what happens next?" The old man leaned in, curious. "No crying? No bargaining? No threats?" He already knew the answer but asked anyway. The boy frowned, thoughtful. "Why would I? My life was short, yes, but fulfilling. I don't have any family left. I'll miss my friends, but what is friendship in front of death?" The old man chuckled. "Just 14, and already thinking like that." He let out a sigh. "Well, it was my daughter Fate who shaped the life you lived. She gave you a path that forced early maturity. I'm sorry your life was hard, and so short." The boy looked up at the man, a little surprised. He wasn't foolish, he could sense this man was no ordinary being. Perhaps a god. Or something even higher. And yet, he seemed so human. "So, heaven or hell?" the boy asked. "Neither," the old man replied. "Though they exist, I brought you here to offer an opportunity. You'll be reincarnated into another world with some gifts. Are you willing?" The boy paused. "Why?" The god simply smiled. "Why not?" The boy blinked, taken aback by the simplicity of the answer. Then he smirked, amused. "Will I get wishes of my choosing? Can I pick the world?" The old man shook his head. "The wheel of fate will decide. Don't worry, she was unkind to you in life, but she won't be in death." At that, a woman entered the room. Her skin was pale like candle wax, her limbs adorned with soft, shimmering scales. She carried 3 wheels and gently set them down before stepping aside with a kind smile. "These wheels," the old man explained, "will determine your reincarnation." He pointed to each one. "The first chooses the world. The second grants a talent or bloodline. The third gives a gift, an item, a weapon, or even a celestial artifact." The woman, silent and graceful, spun the first wheel. Names blurred past fictional worlds from books and movies the boy had read, strange Earth variants labeled with numbers like Earth 21. The wheel stopped on Harry Potter. The second wheel spun. It clicked into place on ritual talent. The third came to a halt on an item called the Celestial Gourd. "See," the god said with a grin. "I told you she wouldn't be unkind to you in death." The boy nodded, satisfied even if he didn't quite know what the Celestial Gourd was. The old man's reaction told him it was something powerful. "So what now?" he asked. "Will I be born holding a giant gourd? Poor future mother." The god burst out laughing. "No. You won't regain your memories until you turn 8. The gourd will appear to you then. Reincarnation will begin in 3 hours. Ideal conditions must be prepared. The boy gave a small nod, then looked around. Would you both like to spend time with me until then? And what should I call you? He asked the second question sheepishly, realizing he hadn't introduced himself or asked theirs. The old man chuckled. Call me God. And this is Vasuki. He smiled warmly. And yes, let's have a little picnic. 3 hours later, the three of them sat in a beautiful garden. God and Vasuki sat on a mat surrounded by incredible food, while the boy ran around, playing with exotic creatures that seemed pulled from myths and dreams. Laughter filled the air, carefree and light. Eventually, the old man stood. Time's up, he said, his voice tinged with reluctance. The boy returned to them, bowing his head. He thanked them both, God, for giving him another chance at life, and Vasuki, for her warmth and the wonderful food. Both smiled. As the final moment approached, Vasuki stepped forward. She pulled a shimmering scale from her arm and placed it in his hand. Here, she said gently. A small gift. It may influence your fate, and might even alter the world you're going to. A warm light enveloped him. The boy smiled one last time. And then, with a soft flash, he was gone. Chapter 2, Awakening. April 29, 1988. A boy of about 8 years lay asleep in his bed. He had light brown skin and black hair. Suddenly, he woke up, staring at the ceiling with gritted teeth, enduring a sharp, burning pain in his chest. The last 8 years of his life had been some of the best he had ever known. His earlier memories stretching back 14 years before that occasionally surfaced in his dreams, but he rarely paid them much mind. His name now was Eric Hawthorne. His first name came from his mother, and his last from his father. His mother was Indian, his father British. The Hawthorne family was a well-established noble line of wizards, wealthy, influential, and deeply rooted in both the Muggle and wizarding worlds. After a moment, the pain subsided. Eric relaxed and closed his eyes once more. There was nothing he could do about it right now. That morning, Eric woke fully aware that the memories of his previous life had returned. He was now part of a loving, magical family. His mother's name was Edwina Hawthorne, and his father's was Simon Hawthorne. As Eric came downstairs, he saw them both in the kitchen preparing breakfast together. When Edwina noticed him, she smiled warmly, came over, and pinched his cheeks. "Your dad and I are preparing a special dinner for you today," she said softly. "Today is the birthday of my precious child." Eric jumped onto a chair, swinging his legs as he waited. Most of his current life felt like his true one, while the memories of his past remained distant shadows. Magic had fascinated him since birth. Now, being part of a wizarding family, he was eager to learn all he could. "I want to learn magic as soon as possible," he thought, his face contemplative and eyes filled with determination. Surely being born into this family came with some advantage. "Mom," he asked quietly, "is there any magic I can try right now?" Hearing the question, his mother was a little surprised, then shook her head. "Not for some time, son. Your magic is still a little volatile. But don't worry, I'm from a very special clan in India, and once your magic settles, we can start your magical journey properly." Eric wasn't disheartened. He knew his mother belonged to a special Indian clan, though she had been born in Britain, 10 years after her parents moved there. He felt a strong connection to his gifts and sensed he would learn more about them today. The family enjoyed breakfast and celebrated his birthday with a trip to the park, games, and some shopping. As evening approached, a tired Eric wandered into the lawn to explore the growing connection he felt within. He called out to the presence in his soul, and immediately, information began flowing into his mind. One gift revealed itself as a ritual talent, granting him a natural aptitude for learning and performing rituals, both on himself and others, with great success. Then came the gourd. As he thought of it, a small, silver gourd with a moon carved on its surface appeared in his hand. Information about its function entered his mind. It could store moonlight-infused liquid, enhancing the growth of magical herbs and even creating entirely new ones under certain conditions. A third presence stirred. A scale thumped in his chest like a heartbeat, causing a wave of intense heat to rise through his body. This was the snake given to him by Vasuki. Eric, familiar with Indian mythology, knew Vasuki the Serpent King, a demigod of immense power. As he recalled Vasuki's face, the scale dissolved into his body, unleashing searing energy and flooding his mind with spontaneous knowledge rituals, spells, and their intricate requirements. The surge overwhelmed him. Eric passed out on the grass. Some moments later, his parents found him unconscious and rushed him inside in a panic. Half an hour later, Eric awoke to the familiar ceiling of his room and the cooling comfort of a wet cloth on his forehead. Turning his head, he saw his worried father on the right, and his mother on the left, gently holding his hand. What shocked him most was the sight of his mother speaking in Parcel tongue. She waved her wand slowly over his body, speaking in the ancient snake language. A cold current flowed through him, soothing the raw energy the scale had released. The foreign power was now integrating seamlessly with his blood, becoming part of him. With another whisper from his mother, he started feeling drowsy and fell into a slumber. Chapter 3: The Talk. The next day, as Eric woke up, he had to lie in bed for 15 minutes, simply sorting through the new knowledge swirling in his mind. He was worried his parents might question him about yesterday. He remembered holding the gourd in his hand when he passed out. Where is it? He thought, looking around in mild panic, then sighed in relief as he saw it safely on his bedside. He got up, walked over, and opened the gourd. Only a few drops of silver liquid remained inside. He pocketed it quickly. The gourd was about the size of an apple and headed downstairs. As he entered the hall, he spotted his mother sitting on the sofa, lost in thought. When she saw him, her face lit up with a warm smile. She beckoned him over. He walked up to her, and she scooped him into her lap. He leaned into her embrace instinctively. "Are you feeling all right, baby?" his mother asked softly. He nodded silently. "It seems your magic has settled in and awakened. That likely caused the fever and the passing out," she said, gently brushing his hair with her fingers. He looked up at her for a moment, then leaned in again. She seemed to be drawing her own conclusions about yesterday. Of course, no mother would suspect her 8-year-old son of anything too mysterious. "Though, where did you find the silver gourd you were holding in your hand yesterday?" she asked, her voice curious but gentle. She seemed to have some inkling of what it might be. Eric took it out of his pocket and replied, "I went in the basement yesterday and found it in Grandpa's stuff." Edwina was mildly surprised. Her father, a powerful, eccentric wizard, had passed away when Eric was 5. He had traveled the world, collecting ancient artifacts, and filled her childhood with stories of his magical adventures and deep arcane knowledge. Knowing his whimsical nature, she thought it entirely possible that he had left the gourd behind, designing a mechanism so that Eric would discover it on his 8th birthday. She figured it must have some kind of magical property and could prove useful to Eric's magical development in the future. "Do you know what it does?" she asked. He nodded and said, "It makes something that helps grow plants." His vocabulary was still limited, as he was just a little kid. His mother was intrigued. She had never heard of such an object before, but she already had a few ideas on how to help Eric use it. She gently placed him back on the floor and took his hand. "Come with me, son." He followed her eagerly. In his previous life, he had been an orphan, and the love and affection of his parents was all he had ever longed for. He would gladly give up all his gifts and magic if it meant never losing their love. With the warmth of his mother's hand in his, he walked beside her to a small sapling in the garden, one that seemed to be surviving purely by chance. "This is a nagavriksha, a serpent-wood tree sapling," she began. "It was gifted to me by the noble house of green grass after I healed someone in their family. It's a rare and powerful plant, used for wand making, potion brewing, ritual catalysts, and more. It's native to Kerala and is notoriously difficult to grow. She gave him a long, detailed explanation about the plant's value and magical uses. Eric loved these lessons. His mother was a gifted healer from an ancient lineage that used parcel tongue for healing spells, runes, and even powerful secret magic only passed down through blood. A/N, I have not seen or read any skin color-based racism in the Harry Potter world, books or movies, so any discrimination will not happen to him in either the magical or muggle world. These are sensitive topics. This was the family's greatest secret, one she had only recently revealed to Eric. No one outside their bloodline knew the truth. Edwina was famously secretive, known across Britain as the mysterious healer who never let anyone witness her healing rituals, but was widely respected for her results. She was credited in several major healing texts, and her herbal remedies were referenced by other celebrated healers. When her explanation was done, Eric brought out his gourd and gently poured the silver liquid onto the struggling plant. Within moments, the dying sapling shimmered with life. It sprouted fresh leaves and grew to nearly half a foot in height. His mother's eyes widened with astonishment. She squealed in delight and hugged him tightly. He hugged her back, laughing softly. "You know, these plants aren't even meant to grow here," she said in amazement. "Even in Kerala, they take years to reach this size with constant attention and resources." Even though it hadn't felt like much, Eric relished in his mother's praise and her joy. They walked back into the house. His father was sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper. As they entered, he smiled and said, "What mischief were mother and son up to today?" he asked playfully. Edwina stuck her tongue out at him. "That's between mother and son." He chuckled and shook his head. "Nibbin, please set up the table." With a soft pop, their house elf appeared and began preparing the meal. Nibbin was usually cheerful, but still sulking a little. He was upset that they had insisted on cooking dinner themselves yesterday for Eric's birthday. They both smiled knowingly. Nibbin would come around in time. They were used to his quirks. It was Saturday, and since both Edwina and her husband were their own bosses, they would be going to work late. They wanted to spend more time with Eric after the scare from yesterday. "Now that your magic has stabilized, we can start teaching you some basics," his father said, remembering Eric's request. "We'll begin in a few days." The three of them sat together, discussing the morning's events in the warmth of their home. Eric feeling, perhaps for the first time in 2 lifetimes, truly safe. Chapter 4, Foundation and Harry. A week has passed since Eric's birthday, and as promised, his parents will be helping him with some magic. In the garden of the Hawthorne mansion, 3 figures could be seen: Alaric and his parents. "You can't have a wand right now, as you will be getting your official wand when you turn 11 and you get your Hogwarts acceptance letter," Simon explained to his son. Eric just hung his head dejectedly at that. "Well, if you had a wand right now, it would not be of much use to you, as we will be building your foundation first," Simon explained with a chuckle, looking at Eric's cute reaction. "Well, then start running laps around the field and do push-ups and squats," said the man with hands on his hips and chin high. Eric gawked at his father for a moment before the look in his father's eyes made him instinctively start running. "This is not magical, I wanted magic," the boy said, looking betrayed. His father just laughed. This training was not just to torment him but also to increase his magic capacity. No wizarding family would make their kids do physical exercises. It was Edwina who found the correlation with physical exercises and the capacity of the magic the person can hold. She was just sitting on the porch, watched the father and son in amusement. As Simon was getting all the hate for her doing, she looked at a wand at her side, her father's wand. This was the wand she would be using to train her son, but after some time it would not be advisable to use a wand with so little time passing from the maturation of Eric's magic. As Eric looked at his father's face in hatred while running, he was surprised that he was not feeling much fatigue. It seems that the scale has changed his body in some way. Now he was just being a hater for no reason, but can't stop now, can he? A week has passed with the brutal training, and once when Eric's parents were having an argument and asked him who he loved more, he just said, "I love mom more than dad," in a second, and got lots of kisses from his mom and the depressed face of his dad. With his revenge done, he just went out to the park to play and make some friends. He actually just lived near the town of Little Winging and went out exploring the area on his bike, hoped to meet the famous boy who lived. Just as he rounded a corner, he saw Harry sitting on a bench in the park, just looking at the cloudy sky. Harry's clothes were big enough to fit two of him, so he was very conspicuous. Eric saw his search bearing fruit and approached the boy with the scar. "That one looks like a dog, doesn't it?" he asked Harry, pointing at a cloud. Harry was surprised someone was taking to him a look to the side to a boy his age with black hair and black eye looking at him. Harry just nodded and didn't say anything. He just guesses that if he would say yes, the boy would say just like you and start bullying him like the others. Eric, seeing the reaction, knew what Harry was thinking and just sighed and sat beside him, to which Harry flinched. Eric just decided to be direct. "I am not going to hurt or call you names." Harry just looked at him and looked back up and said, "It does look like a dog." Eric just chuckled and patted him on the back. "You wanna wait for another dog to appear and make them fight, or do you wanna come with me and play?" Saying that, Eric stood up and took out a ball from his pocket, showing it to Harry. Eric in his previous life found a connection with the fictional character of Harry Potter, as both were orphans and had a hard life. He was not really planning to seek out Harry at the beginning, but when we learned from him mother how near they were to Little Winging, he decided to meet Harry. After a moment, Harry got up and just nodded, and they started playing a little. The two boys spent the afternoon playing. No one disturbed them. No cruel Dudley. No suspicious adults. Just two boys being boys. When it was time to leave, they said their goodbyes, and Eric biked home with a grin on his face. "N, I don't know what else to do. It's not like friendship between kids is complicated. Mom, I made a friend today," he shouted as soon as he stepped through the door. Edwina's heart swelled with joy. Eric had always been a bit standoffish around other kids, and she had worried. But it seemed some physical exertion and structure had helped after all. "I should tell Simon to increase his training," she mused while ruffling Eric's hair. Eric felt a sudden cold breeze pass through him and shivered slightly. Maybe it was just the weather. At dinner, he told his father about Harry. Simon listened intently and said, "I'll come with you to the park tomorrow. It'll be good to meet your friend." Eric just nodded, not realizing his father's deeper thoughts. "A little father-son time and he'll forgive me for all that training," Simon thought. But Eric didn't hate him, not even close. The training wasn't even that hard for him, not with his enhanced physique. This was their little game, and they both secretly enjoyed it. Chapter 5, The Mark Beneath the Mask. "Let's go, son," shouted Simon as Eric appeared from his room, fully dressed and ready to leave. They both hopped into Simon's 1961 XKE and set off toward Little Whinging. The purebloods would have been spitting blood at the indignity of the patriarch of the ancient and noble house of Hawthorne using a Muggle contraption. But Simon didn't care, never had. Status meant nothing compared to family. Father and son reached the park where Eric was to meet Harry. Eric had told Harry they'd be meeting in the morning, but the boy was running a little late. About half an hour passed, and as Eric and Simon kicked a ball around, Harry finally appeared, walking in small, hesitant steps with the lower part of his face covered by a cloth. Eric looked at him strangely. "What's with the cloth?" he asked. "I've got a little cold," Harry replied quickly. "Didn't want you to catch it." Harry was lying. Earlier, Dudley had seen Eric leaving after playing with Harry and grown jealous, angry that Harry had made a new, wealthy friend. He ran to tell Uncle Vernon, who saw this as a threat. If people found out a freak lived at number 4 Privet Drive, it would ruin their reputation as a perfectly normal family. So, Vernon had taught Harry the consequences again. The next day, Harry had made up several excuses to leave the house. Despite the beatings, he just wanted to play. To feel like a normal boy, even for an hour. Simon was quietly alarmed at Harry's appearance. The boy looked malnourished, like he came from poverty. But he said nothing. Eric's choice in friends was his own, and if this boy made his son happy, that was enough. "Hello, Mr. Hawthorne. Nice to meet you," Harry greeted politely. Simon simply ruffled the boy's hair and stepped aside to watch them play. As Eric and Harry ran about, the cloth slipped from Harry's face. Eric caught a glimpse of a dark scar and stopped in his tracks. What happened? Why do you have a scar on your face? Simon walked over, eyes narrowing. Harry hastily replaced the cloth. I just fell, don't worry about it, he said quickly, shivering slightly. But Simon had already seen enough. Don't you live at number 10, Privet Drive? He asked casually. Harry instinctively replied, No sir, I live at number 4. Then looked confused. Simon feigned ignorance. Ah, I must have mistaken you for someone else. Eric noticed the cold glint in his father's eyes. He knew what it meant. He wouldn't have to do anything. His father had seen. His father would act. I'll be back in a minute. Don't go far, Simon said, making up an excuse about forgetting something. Eric waved him off. We won't, he promised. Simon Hawthorne was not a man who liked meddling in others' affairs. But he was a good man and a powerful one. The moment he saw the scar on Harry's face, and the lightning-shaped one on his forehead, he knew exactly who the boy was. He didn't care that Harry was the boy who lived. He cared that Harry was his son's friend. And that meant something. He had used a bit of legilimency, not enough to hurt, just enough to skim the surface of Harry's thoughts. It confirmed what he feared. That was enough. Number 4, Privet Drive. The doorbell rang. Vernon Disley, holding an ice cream cone, opened the door and blinked at the sight of the tall, well-built man standing there. How can I help you? He asked, a bit thrown off. Petunia appeared from the kitchen, curious. Hello, is this the Disley residence? Simon asked calmly. Vernon wanted to scoff. Of course it was, didn't the man see the plaque beside the door? But he simply nodded. Would your son be home, Mr. Disley? Simon asked. The couple stiffened slightly. No. Did he do something? Petunia asked, alarmed. Simon almost sighed in relief. Good. He didn't want a child witnessing what was about to happen. Without warning, Simon drew his wand. In the blink of an eye, the Disleys were paralyzed, silenced, and seated like puppets on their couch. Simon stepped inside, casting several silent, precise charms. No wasted movements, no noise. He sat across from them and began. Looking Vernon in the eye, he used legilimency at full force. He saw everything. Every act of cruelty. Every moment of fear. Simon's face grew colder by the second. A small flame ignited in his left hand. He waved it before them, and they paled. You will not make Harry do chores again. He will have his own room. You will feed him properly. And you will leave him be. Vernon tried to speak, furious, but still paralyzed. You're not capable of love, Simon continued, his tone colder than the flame in his hand. But you will comply. With a flick of his wand, the Disleys silently screamed in pain, as if engulfed by fire. The illusion lasted only seconds, but it was enough. They were drenched in sweat, breathing heavily, trembling. Simon released their voices. You won't get away with this, Vernon growled, enraged and humiliated. Simon raised a brow. I already have. I'm not just a wizard, I'm a powerful and influential wizard. If I so much as hear a whisper that you've deviated from what I told you, I'll crush you like ants. And should the wizarding world learn what you've done to the boy who lived for the past 8 years? He didn't need to finish. The Disleys turned ghostly pale. Their silence was answer enough. Simon stood, adjusting his coat. Good. Then he left without another word. Chapter 6, The Party. June 1988. Eric had been diligently sticking to his exercise routine, and the results were showing. He was noticeably leaner now, and the baby fat on his face was beginning to fade. His features were sharpening, and there was a quiet pride in the way he carried himself. Something unusual had occurred last month. Eric had accidentally performed a bit of magic. He pulled an object toward himself without a wand. What made it different wasn't just the act itself, it was Eric's extraordinary awareness during the event. Unlike most magical children who would forget such an experience or barely notice it, Eric remembered it clearly. He recalled the distinct sensation of the magic as it flowed through him. He felt it, understood it, and even analyzed it. His maturity far surpassed that of other children his age. Inspired by that moment, Eric had added a new routine to his day. Every night before sleep, he practiced pushing and pulling objects, trying to recapture that feeling. Over the past month, he had made remarkable progress. He proudly demonstrated his ability to his parents, who were more than a little surprised. His mother had smothered him with kisses that evening, and his father had been so proud he walked with his chin held high all day, so high, in fact, that he stepped in dog poop because he wasn't watching where he was going. Eric's parents took his efforts seriously. They knew he wasn't an ordinary child, and they were proud of his discipline and talent. Intrigued by their son's progress, they too began experimenting with wandless magic. Simon, who already had considerable experience in that area, found it easier to adapt and even began coaching Edwina and Eric through more advanced techniques. Meanwhile, Harry Potter's life had taken an unexpected turn. Though still marked by fate, he was no longer abused. The Dursleys, driven more by fear than affection, had begun feeding him properly and even bought him some basic clothes. To everyone's surprise, including Harry's, he spent a weekend at the Hawthorne estate. It had been the best weekend of his young life. Edwina had treated him with warmth and kindness, and for the first time, Harry had experienced what it felt like to be safe and wanted. "Let's go, son," Simon called as Eric emerged dressed in black pants and shirt, with well-worn boots and a brown robe layered on top. Edwina and Simon were also dressed in elegant robes, and together the family looked both refined and formidable. It was July 5th, Draco Malfoy's birthday. The Malfoys had invited them to the celebration in thanks to Edwina, who had once saved Narcissa from a rare magical plant-borne illness. Though the Malfoys were bigots, they weren't fools. They recognized that Edwina was one of the finest healers in the wizarding world, and Simon Hawthorne, head of an ancient and powerful family, commanded immense influence. Many owed the Hawthorns their lives or their positions. Their affairs were draped in secrecy, but none dared cross them. At the fireplace, Edwina gently reminded Eric how to use the Flow network, though he had done so before. With a flash of green flame, the family vanished. Malfoy Manor. 3 figures appeared in the grand entry hall of Malfoy Manor, stepping gracefully from the emerald flame. Heads turned immediately. Lucius and Narcissa approached with dignified poise. "Thank you for coming, Lord and Lady Hawthorne," Lucius greeted smoothly. Simon smiled in return. "Thank you for the invitation. You have a magnificent home. And happy birthday to you, Draco," he added as the young Malfoy approached, receiving the well wishes with a polite nod. Although the Hawthorns were known to support Muggle rights, they were regarded as neutral by the pure-blood elite. No one dared label them blood traitors. Doing so would be political suicide. Simon commanded an extensive trade network spanning France, India, and the United States. Angering him would mean cutting off access to rare magical commodities and invaluable contacts. After the women exchanged greetings, Narcissa turned to Eric and pinched his cheek lightly. "What a handsome young man! Take care of my little Draco, won't you?" Draco, clearly embarrassed, just shook Eric's hand. The two boys wandered off together toward the other children, and to Eric's surprise, Draco wasn't unbearable. At 8, he hadn't yet fully absorbed the supremacist ideals he would one day spout. For now, they had a relatively amicable time and even enjoyed parts of the party. Lucius watched them with cool satisfaction. He knew his son was arrogant, much like himself, but had instructed Draco not to treat Eric as a subordinate. So far, it seemed Draco had listened. In another room, the adults gathered, men and women mingling separately with drinks in hand. You have a fine child, Lord Hawthorne, Lucius said smoothly. And he seems to be getting along well with Draco. Simon inclined his head modestly. He has always been a sensible boy. Ignatius Greengrass, patriarch of the Greengrass family and a longtime friend of Simon's, joined the conversation. Indeed. Eric is a polite boy and gets along well with my daughters too. And I would like to thank Lady Hawthorne again for the help in previous matters. Simon waved his hand modestly and simply accepted the thanks. The women of the Greengrass and Hawthorne families, both known for their healing expertise, shared a close bond. Edwina had once helped Selene when she fell ill, and since then they had become good friends. Serene often visited to speak with Astoria and discuss healing-related topics. Serene Greengrass, the mother of Astoria Greengrass and a healer, had dedicated her life to finding a cure for the greengrass blood disease. To that end, she had once experimented on herself, resulting in her being afflicted with a different curse. Edwina had helped Serene at that time. Although Serene had been unconscious during the treatment and did not see the method Edwina used, she now held deep respect for her and often sought her guidance when facing problems in her own research. The Hawthorne family actually enjoyed the party, as there was no bigotry in their presence and only amiable conversation. Eric and Draco had been talking and playing as well. Eric had become more social after meeting Harry, and he spoke to Draco about many topics, even slightly influencing his views on Muggles during their conversations. Draco liked Eric too. He was the heir of a family on par with the Malfoys, engaging to talk to, and confident. He didn't argue with Eric about pure-blood ideals, as he found Eric to be cool, especially after Eric showed him a bit of his push-and-pull magic, which left Draco with stars in his eyes. A/N, stones and feedback please. I wrote a bigger chapter today. Give me your thoughts on it, as Eric will be helping the Golden Trio a little bit but will not be a part of them, and I am planting seeds for his future friends. Chapter 7, Inheritance. Mom, can we go to Diagon Alley? Asked Eric, his eyes wide and pleading like a puppy's. Edwina glanced at his expression and tried her best to stay firm, but her resolve crumbled in just 5 seconds. She sighed, already knowing she'd lost. Why do you want to go there? She asked, resigned. Ice cream, came the casual reply, as if it were the most obvious reason in the world. And I'll just look around for fun things. She raised an eyebrow at the fun things part but didn't press further. Take Nibbin with you. Her tone left no room for argument. It wasn't a big deal anyway. Diagon Alley was a safe place, especially for wizard-born children. Trips there for errands or sweet treats were part of normal life, like going to the market. Eric hugged his mother with genuine affection as she called for Nibbin. But what he'd told her wasn't the full truth. The real reason for his visit wasn't ice cream or window shopping. 2 nights ago, he had dreamt of a majestic, silver-scaled serpent, enormous and ancient, that spoke only one word: inheritance. The serpent's voice had a soothing cadence, rich with magic, and its aura pulsed with power. Eric recognized it instinctively: Vasuki. He'd woken up breathless, his heart pounding, but somehow calm. After reflecting on the message, he concluded it wasn't a random dream. Vasuki had sent him a sign. He needed to go to Gringotts. He needed to take an inheritance test. And so, off he went with Nibbin. The cheerful little house elf, seemingly recovered from the emotional chaos of Eric's birthday, was in high spirits again, delighted just to accompany his young master. Eric enjoyed a scoop of chocolate fudge swirl, his favorite, and even shared some with Nibbin, who accepted it with gleeful gratitude. As they wandered through the cobbled streets, Eric asked casually, "Do you know where Gringotts Bank is, Nibbin?" Nibbin nodded eagerly but tilted his head. "Why does young master ask?" Eric waved his hand vaguely. "I heard it's really pretty to look at." It was a flimsy excuse, and he knew it. But he needed Nibbin to lead him there without asking too many questions. Nibbin blinked in confusion. Pretty? It was just a bank, a grand one, yes, but hardly something children got excited about. Still, orders were orders. Without pressing further, he guided Eric toward the towering white building at the far end of the street. As they neared Gringotts, Eric turned and asked, "Do you want to come in with me?" Niben was caught off guard. "Why would young master go into the bank?" he asked, concerned. "You're just 8 years old." Eric was prepared. "Mom only gave me enough for the ice cream. I want to get her a gift, so I'll make a small withdrawal from my heir account." It wasn't unheard of. Among noble wizarding families, heirs often had vaults set up in their name, with money added annually for their future. Most children weren't allowed access until they were older, but Eric was an exception. His father, Simon, trusted him deeply and had given him limited access. He knew Eric was mature beyond his years. Eric might have been a spoiled young master if not for his previous life. "You wait outside, Niben. There are goblins inside," Eric said with a grin. But Niben frowned and shook her head. "Niben is allowed to enter with young master. Mistress told me to keep you safe." Though her vocabulary was better than most house elves, she still slipped up occasionally. "Gringotts is the safest place in Britain," Eric said flatly, staring at her with a look that brokered no argument. Niben hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. But young master must call if he needs help." "I promise." Eric smiled warmly. "You can go fetch some supplies while I handle things in the bank. It'll save time." Niben gave one last worried glance before vanishing down the alley, muttering about parchment and polishing soap. Eric stepped up to the grand marble steps of Gringotts, ignoring the worn inscription above the doors that threatened those who would steal. He pushed the doors open and walked inside with as much confidence as an 8-year-old could muster. A long hall stretched before him, lined with goblins at high desks. He made his way to one with a polished nameplate, Nook. "Excuse me," Eric said, standing tall. "Can I have an inheritance test?" Nook didn't even look up. 50 galleons. Deducted from my Hawthorne heir account, Eric replied. That made the goblin pause. He slowly raised his head and stared at the boy. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Instead, he retrieved a form and slid it across the counter. "Signature," he said curtly. Eric signed. Nook didn't ask questions. Goblins knew better than to meddle in wizarding affairs, especially old families. He simply stood and gestured for Eric to follow. Inside a private chamber, Nook handed Eric a small, silver needle and a blank parchment. "Prick your finger. Let one drop of blood fall onto the parchment." Eric nodded. He pierced his finger without flinching. But then something strange happened. A dormant scale within his body pulsed, reacting to the blood. A second drop emerged not from his finger, but from the scale itself. It hovered in the air, glowing faintly, before merging with the blood from his finger and dropping onto the parchment. There was a brief flash of light. Runes lit up along the edges of the parchment as magic flared. Nook's eyes widened. Alongside the expected Hawthorne lineage and all its associated titles and assets, there was another name etched into the glowing list. Another inheritance. One that should not have been there. /N yes, a cliffhanger. I've scattered the clues. Let's see if you can guess whose inheritance Eric just unlocked. Give me stone, and I'll give you chapters. Chapter 8, Resin and Ring. /N, I have a confession, guys. Well, I tricked you yesterday. The inheritance is actually from an OC, and honestly, I just used it as a plot device to give the MC a castle and some subordinates. Cry about it, I don't care. Love you. Illyria Nightshade. That was the name written on the parchment. Nook's pupils dilated the moment he saw it, leaving Eric confused. Well, it seems you have quite the future ahead of you, though whether it will be a blessing or a curse to those around you remains to be seen, Nook said cryptically, and left the room before Eric could ask any questions. Wait here for a minute, were his final words as the door closed behind him. Eric didn't have to wait long. Nook soon returned, carrying a beautiful silver box, which he placed gently on the table. "This is your inheritance. It was entrusted to us by a powerful wizard hundreds of years ago." Curious, Eric asked about the wizard. Nook simply rubbed 2 fingers together in a universal sign, "Pay up." Eric's lip twitched in irritation. 10 galleons. 20 it is, Nook replied smoothly, already pulling out a form for Eric to sign, one that would deduct the amount from his account. Eric signed with a reluctant sigh. Even before the founding of this bank, goblins weren't held in high regard by wizard kind. But there was one thing they needed us for: inheritance testing. Any wizard who wanted a true inheritance test had to come to us, and our results were universally accepted. During that time, a powerful witch by the name of Nightshade entrusted us with this box. Though little known among human wizards, we goblins knew her well. She earned our fear and our respect. Nook grimaced at the admission, clearly disliking the idea of revering a human. Even if human, the strong deserve respect, he thought. She saved a group of centaurs and even aided the goblins in difficult times, earning our favor. Then, one day, she vanished. What he didn't say was that after the bank's founding, some foolish goblin heads tried to tamper with her box and their entire bloodline ceased to exist. That legacy alone was enough to strike fear into goblins who had never even heard her name. Eric, silently contemplating the goblin's words, opened the silver box. Inside were a letter and a golden ring coiled with a silver snake. The letter read: "My dear inheritor, it is not my blood that grants you this inheritance, it is the blood of my goddess, Yasuki. In life, I was her devoted follower and chosen avatar in the mortal world. It appears you, too, have been chosen by her. All that was mine is now yours. This ring is a permanent portkey to my castle, the essence of my life's work and my goddess's will. Speak her name, and you shall be transported there. The ring will grant you full control over the castle and the island upon which it stands. I regret that I cannot meet you in person and offer my protection, but know that I am with my goddess, watching over you and wishing you well. Illyria Nightshade." Eric had never met the woman, but at that moment, he knew she would have died for him if she could. With a quiet reverence, he folded the letter and tucked it into his breast pocket, feeling a melancholy affection for someone he had never known. Nook had been observing him the entire time. When the ring responded to Eric's touch, he was certain the test had not failed. A gleam appeared in the goblin's eye. "Would you like me to manage your account and financial affairs? I'll charge less than the others and I will swear a vow to be fair to you," he offered. Nook saw promise in the boy. If he stayed close, he could climb to the top of goblin society. He handed Eric a charm for contact and left, giving him time to consider the offer. At the Hawthorne mansion, Edwina was tending to the Nagavriksha tree she and Eric had nurtured. Though it had stopped growing after reaching the height of a normal tree, even with water from the silver gourd, it had been changing internally, evolving into something far more powerful. Its resin held immense magical properties and was worth waging a war for, if wizards could even get a drop. Edwina had collected enough for 3 people, an amount that usually took decades to gather. Simon, aware of the tree's potential, was now preparing a potion using the resin. He was one of the greatest potion masters of his time, though he kept his talents hidden from the world. "I'm back," Eric called, entering with Nibbin. Edwina immediately came over, picked him up, kissed him, and patted Nibbin's head. Still in her arms, Eric presented her with a golden pendant containing a small moving family photo. She smiled brightly and wore it without hesitation. Simon, feigning sadness, asked, "No gifts for your dear father?" Eric responded slyly, "Can I skip training tomorrow?" Simon rolled his eyes in amusement. Eric had truly tried to find a suitable gift for his father, but Simon already had everything. He'd think of something special soon. Simon wasn't upset. He knew what his son was thinking and appreciated his kind heart. Turning to Nibbin, Simon asked, "Did you bring the hibiscus petals and moonstone powder?" Nibbin handed over the ingredients, and Simon continued brewing the potion. Soon, 3 vials stood completed before them. "Son, these potions are made from the tree's resin. They possess extraordinary magical properties and are completely safe. Would you like to take it?" Eric nodded immediately. He trusted his mother. In a blank room within the Hawthorne mansion, Eric sat cross-legged in the center. His parents sat at either side, ready to assist if anything went wrong. He drank the potion in one gulp. A cooling sensation spread through his body. His entire being felt reinforced, every cell, every bone. Even his soul felt nourished. His senses sharpened, and his mind felt stronger, more resilient, as if something fundamental had changed within him. Simon and Edwina observed quietly, sensing the powerful potential growing in their son. They knew he was destined for great things. A/N. Should Eric tell his parents about the inheritance? He won't reveal all his secrets, but as seen with the Disley situation, his parents will be helping him for some time and will also take the resin potion. "Give me stones and I'll give you chapters. Thank you for your comments and support. I hope you enjoy the story." Chapter 9, The Village. After Eric, it was Edwina and Simon's turn to drink the potion, and just like with Eric, it went without a hitch. But there was one notable difference: Eric now possessed 2 scales within his body, something his parents did not. He was certain the original scale had been absorbed by him on his 8th birthday, so where had the second one come from? Could he give them to others? Well, those were questions for his future self. Right now, it was time to begin his first true magical training. After the ritual, Edwina handed him the wand of his grandfather. With that, Eric could finally begin proper spell work. "What do you want to start with?" asked Simon. Although he posed the question, it was clear Eric would need to begin with basic spells like the levitation charm or Lumos. "How about freezing stuff?" Eric asked softly. Simon considered it for a moment, then agreed. They began training with the spell Chill Aria, which produced a cold breeze and could chill the air or small objects like a drink or potion vial. To Simon's surprise, it took Eric only about 15 minutes to successfully cast the spell. A chilly gust of wind flowed from his wand and cooled a glass of water. Pleased, Simon introduced him to the intermediate version, Chill Aria Glacis, a spell that could freeze small surfaces and create slippery ice traps. This spell was considered quite advanced, too difficult for most third-year Hogwarts students, let alone an 8-year-old, but Simon himself had created the Chill Aria spell series up to 4 levels and was currently developing a 5th, which he believed might verge into the realm of ancient magic. Though talented, Eric couldn't master such a spell in just one day. Still, he tried several first-year level spells, managing to cast most of them within 1 or 2 attempts, or at most 15 minutes. Later came potion training with his father. The first day wasn't particularly eventful, but foundational knowledge was crucial, and Eric was diligent in learning it. That evening, he turned to his parents. "Mom, Dad, come with me. I want to show you something." Despite the full day of training, he showed no signs of exhaustion. Curious, Edwina and Simon followed him as he pulled a beautiful gold and silver ring from his pocket. "When I went to Diagon Alley yesterday, I took an inheritance test at the bank," he said quietly. "Why?" Edwina asked. "I had a dream, Mom. I saw a big, pretty snake, and it said inheritance to me." Simon looked confused, but Edwina's eyes flickered with a glimmer of recognition. Just as Simon was about to question further, she gently placed a hand on his, signaling him to let Eric continue. "I received the inheritance of a witch named Ilaria Nightshade. This ring is a porte-clés to her castle." Simon took the ring and inspected it for enchantments or curses. "I'll go there first and check if it's safe. Then the 2 of you can come with me," he said, and asked Eric for the porte-clés password. "Vasuki," Eric replied. With a soft pop, Simon disappeared. He landed smoothly in front of a village not one inhabited by humans, but by centaurs. Surprisingly, they showed no signs of hostility and approached him calmly. If these were the centaurs from the Forbidden Forest, they'd be pointing arrows at me, he thought as their leader stepped forward. How did you get here? Asked the centaur, a tall figure with brown skin and long white hair. Simon held up the ring silently. The centaur's eyes widened, and he bowed. Welcome to our humble village, my lord. Our tribe is at your service. Taken aback, Simon responded quickly, I'm the father of the inheritor. I came here first to scout the area. Please show me the important places. I'll return shortly. My family must be worried. An hour later, Simon reappeared at the manor with a pop. Before departing, he had created a temporary portcullis linked to the manor's wards to ensure his return. Edwina and Eric rushed to meet him, bombarding him with questions. He raised his hands to quiet them, then sat down and explained what had happened. We'll go together tomorrow and explore, he said. It seems safe. He ruffled Eric's hair and kissed Edwina before heading to his study to finish some work before bedtime. A/N, short chapter today. Thank you all for the amazing response. Chapter 10, The Legacy of Nightshade. Previously on, Eric freezes water, inherits a castle, meets bowing centaurs, and casually drops he's chosen by a snake goddess. Just your average Tuesday for an 8-year-old wizard. Edwina's clan in India was widely regarded as the most skilled group of healers in the magical world. Their unparalleled reputation came from their use of Parselveil in healing, a secret, sacred tradition passed down through generations. But what outsiders didn't know was that her clan were not just healers, they were also formidable fighters. Over centuries, they had developed spells in Parselveil, spells far more potent and precise than any common wizard magic handed down in secret through bloodlines and ritual. Another rare trait of the clan was their belief in gods, something most wizards found quaint or outdated. Among those deities, they revered Vasuki, the serpent goddess, who was both patron and protector of the clan. To them, she wasn't just a divine symbol. She had once walked the earth in mortal form as a woman named Ilaria Nightshade, the first of their line. That night, after returning to their room, Edwina spoke to Simon in a low, serious voice. She told him about the visions and stirrings within the bloodline, about Ilaria and her growing belief that Ilaria had chosen Eric as her successor. Simon's brows furrowed in concern. If that's true, he said, it might attract dangers even I can't protect my little prince from. But Edwina reached for his hand and held it tightly. Then we'll stand together and protect him, she said. Whatever it takes. The next morning, the family gathered in the mansion's entrance hall, dressed in comfortable travel clothes. Eric wore the ring and held the hands of his parents. He spoke the word Vasuki. And with a soft pop, the three of them vanished. They landed on soft earth before a grand sight, a towering castle of black stone, laced with glowing runes that pulsed gently in the morning light. It's comparable to Hogwarts, Simon murmured in awe. Eric took a moment to steady himself after the teleportation, and Edwina gently patted his back. Let's go meet the centaur tribe, said Simon. They know every corner of this island and it seems they're here to serve you, son. As the family entered the centaur village, the herd immediately noticed Eric. They bowed to him, a surreal sight, watching proud, towering centaurs lower their heads before a child. Welcome to the village of the Astratherian herd, my lord, said the centaur leader, his voice calm and respectful. He was called Orion, and he offered to personally guide the family around the island. The island was lush and alive. Its forests teemed with magical beasts, unicorns, thestrals, mooncalves, and even rare magical hybrids, all living in perfect harmony. The very land seemed to shift subtly with the seasons, shaped by enchantments that maintained balance and beauty. Even the beasts appeared drawn to Eric. They offered the family rides, nuzzled against them, and gifted rare items, scales, feathers, and other magical parts they had naturally shed over the years. Finally, they arrived before the gates of Castle Ilaria, sleek and imposing, its black stone walls edged with glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. I must leave you now, Orion said at the entrance. You will be in the care of the castle's guardian. With that, he turned and departed. As they stepped inside, a figure awaited them just beyond the threshold. A humanoid being stood tall, with bark-like skin edged with glowing blue veins. His hair looked like flowing moss woven with silver threads, and his eyes gleamed like pale blue crystals, pupil-less and ancient. I am Thimril, a Velaran, a rare magical being born of tree spirits and lightning, he said, his voice slow but warm. I have guarded this castle since its inception. Welcome. The family followed him inside and were surprised to find the castle not cold and grim, but bright, spotless, and serene. The floors and walls were polished white marble, and enchantments flowed softly through the halls. Inside Castle Illyria, the air was cool and still, yet heavy with ancient magic. The vast corridors echoed softly with each step. Tall arched windows lined the halls, glowing faintly even without sunlight. The great hall was circular with a domed ceiling that reflected the sky above in real time. Phoenixes roosted high in the rafters, their radiant feathers warming the air. A few circled down around Eric, singing as they playfully danced through the air. Next, Thimril led them to the treasury, and even Simon was taken aback not by the piles of gold, but by the ancient artifacts, each shimmering with runes and layered enchantments. Most of these were crafted by the goblins who live on the island, Thimril explained. Simon raised a brow. Not like those greedy buggers from Gringotts, I hope, he said, dodging an elbow from Edwina. Thimril tilted his head thoughtfully. I do not know of the others, but our goblins are not greedy. They would give their lives for the young lord. They are master smiths, perhaps greater than those you've encountered. They have honed their craft and shared their knowledge freely for centuries. Simon was surprised. He didn't believe goblins were beneath him, but being a wealthy lord, he'd grown used to Gringotts goblins trying to exploit him, and that had shaped his views. Eric's eyes lit up at the glittering treasures. Simon chuckled and tapped him on the forehead. We're not much poorer than this, you know well, if we're only counting gold. Eric rubbed his forehead, then asked with curiosity. Do we have spellbooks, potion scrolls, and ritual texts here? We do, said Thimril with a smile. He guided them to the castle library. The family explored the immense library, its curved shelves filled with tomes of magic old and forgotten. They didn't take the original books. Instead, Thimril provided blank ones, and they used duplication spells to copy what they needed. Simon selected the oldest and most advanced books on ice magic, hoping to refine his Chillaria spell series, along with high-level potion texts. Edwina picked out ritual and healing books, eager to expand her knowledge for both her son and herself. Meanwhile, Eric stood in a corner, deep in conversation with Thimril. Probably up to some mischief, his parents thought. Before they left the library, Thimril handed them a small enchanted statue of a thunderbird. Link this to the wards of your house, he said. You'll then be able to travel between the castle and your mansion at will. It will also enhance your home's magical defenses. Later, Thimril showed them to the sleeping quarters, and they each chose rooms with windows facing the moon. That night, bathed in soft moonlight, the family drifted into sleep beneath the watchful presence of phoenixes and ancient magic. A/N, I was excited to write this chapter and I hope you like it. Stones and comments please. Up next, the first ritual for the family. Chapter 11, Blood, Bone, and Flame. Parts of a magical beast willingly given. A place that has stood for more than 500 years. A silver bowl filled with moon water, spring water left under the full moon. Runes long forgotten by time itself. These were the requirements for the ritual the Hawthorne family would be performing today. The knowledge of this ancient rite had been implanted in Eric's mind on his 8th birthday, a gift from his unique ritual talent. The purpose of the ritual was clear, to merge the essence of a magical beast with a human, granting them abilities reflective of the creature. In a secluded room atop the roof of the castle, with 4 pillars shimmering with ancient runes and open to the sky, the Hawthorne family prepared. The space radiated magic older than memory. Eric carried the egg of a mutated Ashwinder. While ordinary Ashwinders lived only a few hours and laid sterile eggs, these mutated ones born on the island lived for years and wielded refined control over fire. The egg Eric held belonged to the oldest among them. Though sterile, it pulsed with dormant power. Simon, his father, held the horns of a Romanian longhorn. These dragons thrived in cold regions and were famed for their growing intelligence and strength with age. The horn Simon had belonged to one born on the island hundreds of years older than even the ancient ones outside it. Edwina, Eric's mother, brought the horns of a grap horn, prized for their use in advanced healing potions and their powerful healing magic. "I will go first," Simon said firmly. "If anything goes wrong, I don't want either of you caught in it." Eric and Edwina could only nod under the weight of his gaze. Simon placed the dragon horns into the silver bowl. The runes edged around the circle shimmered, and the moon water inside stirred into a red, icy liquid. Simon seated himself in the center of the ritual circle, and the chilled liquid was poured over him. Instantly, his body froze, and shivers racked his frame as though he were atop Mount Everest. Yet he held firm. In his mind, the image of a majestic dragon emerged. The freezing cold now brought him comfort rather than pain. Time blurred. His bones strengthened, his skin gained magical resistance, and his eyes glowed faintly with ancient wisdom. The surrounding ice shifted with his mere gesture. The dragon bowed to him. Simon opened his eyes. He felt his magic expand, his strength soar beyond what any human should be capable of in a higher understanding of ice and an element. "There were no complications, it seems," he said, smiling. Next was Edwina's turn. The same process followed. As the moon water ritual enveloped her, her body reached its peak potential. Her healing magic ascended to a higher plane. A subtle aura now clung to her, altering the flow of magic in others, especially dark magic it now bent in submission before her. Finally, Eric stepped into the circle. Unlike the others, he took the egg with him and placed it gently on his lap. As the moon water was poured, the egg dissolved into a stream of fire and flowed into his body. His body, already enhanced, absorbed the flame eagerly. It settled in his heart, docile and obedient, nourished by his magic. Eric discovered he could control it with his thoughts without spell, without wand. "You did good, son," Simon said, proud, as Eric stepped away from the circle. They all turned and thanked Thimril, who had been assisting them for the past 2 days. Even now, he stood at the side, ensuring every preparation was perfect. With their ritual complete, they used a temporary portkaya to return home. Once back, Simon took the Thunderbird statue to the mansion's ward stone. He placed it beside the stone. The statue expanded, and lightning crackled as the stone sparked to life. Niben, the family's loyal house elf, was preparing food when he felt a surge of power rush through him. House elves are connected to the wards of the homes they serve, and draw magical energy from them for survival. The ward's shift had affected him directly. Sparks of electricity danced around Niben, and the ingredients around him spoiled with a crackle. Simon, sensing the surge, ran into the kitchen. "Sorry, master. Niben ruined the family dinner," he cried. Simon simply patted his head gently. "It's all right, Niben. That was my fault. I was adjusting the wards and didn't account for how they would affect you." Niben blinked. "So, it wasn't my fault?" "No. And now that you seem to have gained some elemental magic of the thunder aspect, you'll be able to protect the mansion and your young master even better." At that, Niben jumped with joy. After a few moments, he got back to cooking with newfound enthusiasm. He now stood a little taller than before, and even looked a little less, well, ugly. A/N, these were the foundational chapters. There aren't many chapters left before the Hogwarts arc begins. Eric is just too OP right now. I hope you liked the chapter. Tell me your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. Chapter 12, Forged in Magic. Months had passed since the ritual, and the Hawthorne family had been carrying out their daily lives during this time. They would visit Nightshade Castle frequently, spending peaceful evenings there after their daily duties, nourished by the castle's ancient magic through the night. Eric had been visiting the goblins of the island and mingling with them for some time now. He was keen to learn smithing from them and was currently crafting a wand holster and a sword, working with the head goblin by his side. The goblins of the island were the ideal goblins anyone could imagine. Unlike British goblins who were greedy hoarders that didn't even share knowledge among their own kind, leading to stagnation, these goblins were the opposite. They shared their knowledge freely and had advanced their craft over the past hundreds of years. Before Eric burned a silver flame metallic in color, as if made of real liquid silver, molding the metal in front of him. He would soften the metal so the goblin could draw runes on it, after which the metal would be submerged in a golden liquid. The process would repeat again and again. This silver flame was the same flame Eric had acquired via the ritual, now mutated by his magic, showing its current form. Image of the flame. Splendid, my lord. You have great talent, and the flame is exceptional. Even in hundreds of years, we have not been able to create a technique that molds this metal as precisely as your flame has, praised the goblin. Eric smiled shyly at the compliment. After 2 more hours of work, the task was complete. A wand holster and a sword lay in front of them, months of labor brought to fruition. Sword image. This was what he had been discussing with Thimril that day, and now, with his hard work, it was complete. The holster was made of dragon hide leather but featured metallic parts crafted from a black metal, etched with runes. The sword was forged from a dark metal, glowing with golden runes. The metal we used was created by my ancestor 300 years ago, using dragon bones refined with magic over decades and goblin steel, the goblin explained. He began teaching Eric, restating old knowledge like a seasoned instructor, and Eric listened diligently. Don't try to look, Eric said to his blindfolded father as he led the man by the hand to the great hall of Hawthorne Mansion. Simon sighed helplessly while Edwina chuckled beside them. As soon as they reached the hall, Edwina gasped and hugged Eric, praising him. Your father will love it, she said, causing Simon's curiosity to rise. Okay now, Dad, remove the cloth, Eric said as he stepped aside. Simon removed the cloth and looked ahead. He didn't need even a second to adjust to the light. He was surprised to see the 2 objects before him, a beautiful sword and a wand holster. He caressed the objects with his fingertips, marveling at the craftsmanship. There wasn't a goblin in Britain who could create such quality, no matter how much money was offered. Simon smiled broadly and picked up Eric in his arms. Did my little prince make this? He asked. Eric nodded and hugged him. Well, it was mostly the chief goblin from the village, he clarified. Simon ruffled his hair and kissed his forehead, mist forming in his eyes as Edwina joined in the family hug, praising their son. Simon wore the holster, which fit comfortably. Press this part and your wand will appear in your hand. It can also summon your wand from a short distance, Eric explained. Simon was surprised but listened quietly as Eric described both objects in detail. Eric sat in Edwina's lap as she playfully pinched his cheeks and molded them into different shapes. Later that night. You know, Edwina said softly, watching Simon admire the blade from different angles in the hall mirror, they're going to talk. Let them, Simon replied calmly, adjusting the holster on his hip. They always do. Yes, but this time they'll whisper about you. That sword, it's not just craftsmanship. It's a statement. Then let the statement be clear, he said, brushing a finger over the golden runes. We forge our own path. We bow to no one. Most wizards don't carry swords on their hip not because they don't want to, but because few swords are worthy of a pure blood lineage. Even goblin-forged blades, the most respected among them, are governed by contracts that demand they be returned if not renewed every 3 generations. To most pure-blood families, the idea of paying goblins across generations is a distasteful notion to the pure bloods. So when Simon Hawthorne arrived at the knot gathering with a sword on his hip, its scabbard adorned in blackened runes, the hilt subtly gleaming with inlaid gold, the entire party noticed, and envied. Thaddeus Carroll leaned subtly toward Lucius Malfoy, who stood stiffly near the wine table, his eyes locked on Simon across the room. "You see that sword?" Carroll muttered. "That is not something bought over a shop counter." Lucius didn't glance away. "No. That's forged. An old magic touches it. Think it's goblin work? It has the weight of it, yes. But I haven't seen craftsmanship like that in decades." The gold runes etched into the blade caught the chandelier's light as Simon passed by, causing an involuntary silence in his wake. There was no need to flash the weapon, it made its own impression simply by existing. Across the room, Ignatius Greengrass approached with a drink in hand and a glimmer of genuine curiosity in his eye. He was someone Simon considered a true friend to. Simon was a little more open. "Simon," he greeted, his tone even and friendly. "That's quite the blade. May I ask where you acquired it?" "You may," Simon said mildly, "but I'll give you only a modest answer. It was a long process." "A process involving goblins?" Simon tilted his head thoughtfully. "Their ancestors, perhaps. The metal itself is centuries old, refined by techniques lost in Britain long ago. The finishing work was done somewhere less territorial." Ignatius chuckled knowingly. "So, not through Gringotts, then? That explains the absence of a chain of debt." Simon smiled faintly at that. They both knew how goblin-forged artifacts were bound by law and legacy. Avoiding entanglement was a feat in itself. "I'd offer to commission something similar, but I doubt I'd know where to begin," Ignatius said, sipping his drink. "Still beautiful work." "Thank you," Simon said. "It's more than a symbol, but symbols matter too." Their conversation shifted to trade. Ignatius lowered his voice slightly, glancing around. "I heard you have been importing some high-quality pioneering ingredients and some great potioners are trading with you exclusively." Simon nodded. "We also have been growing and cultivating magical plants lately along with the food we produced. Would you be willing to add them to your trade network? I guarantee premium quality, reasonable prices, and ample supply," said Ignatius without any pretenses. "Possibly," Simon said with quiet interest. "Send me samples." The subtle nod between the two men sealed far more than a business opportunity. It marked a growing alliance between their families. Meanwhile, Lucius hadn't moved. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze lingered on Simon's sword. He shifted uncomfortably as if weighed down by thoughts best left unspoken. "He walks into the room with nothing to prove and somehow still overshadows us all," Lucius thought bitterly. "That sword isn't just a weapon, it's a message." Across the floor, others had begun to take notice too. Whispers rose and fell as noble lords exchanged speculations. "It must have cost a fortune. More than that, it likely cost favors. Do you think he'll forge more?" Simon offered no answers. He merely stood tall, the quiet power around him more effective than any boast. Since the ritual, there was something new about him, an aura, faint but undeniable. Magic responded to him now as if it recognized its own master. Lucius, on the other hand, had other thoughts. "I've fattened my pawn in the ministry all this time. At the very least, I deserve to get an exquisite goblin-made sword for all those connections." That night, many corrupt ministry officials used their positions to try and find goblins who could forge a sword for them. A/N, Phew, a monster chapter today, as a thank you for the stones and comments from yesterday. I added some conversations to make it more interesting. Stones and suggestions please. Love you. Chapter 13, The Silence That Followed. "Right this way, my lord," Thimril said, bowing slightly as he guided Eric through the ancient corridor. The path twisted gently, lit by enchanted torches, each flame flickering in a quiet rhythm. The air was calm but expectant. They stopped in front of a domed chamber. At its center stood a towering marble statue, silver and coiled, its surface smooth and cold like moonlight. Eric's eyes widened. Vesuki, he whispered and instinctively pressed his hands together in reverence. Thank you, for the new life you gave me. Before the words fully left his lips, a soft hand rested on his head. The castle vanished. He was now standing in a quiet garden. Familiar. Beyond time. Before him stood Vesuki, radiant and still, and beside her was a pale woman with long black hair and thoughtful eyes, Ilaria Nightshade. Vesuki smiled. Thank God for that. I was nearby when it happened. I'm glad I was. Eric didn't speak. He ran forward and wrapped his arms around her waist, hugging her tightly. She returned the hug and stroked his back. I missed you too. Then, with a small flourish, she brought out a picnic box. I made this for you, she said. The scent hit him instantly. Eric's stomach growled, and he laughed before digging in, cheeks quickly puffing with food. The three sat together under the trees. No pressure. No expectations. Just the silence of people who understood one another. We can't meet like this very often anymore, Vesuki said after a moment. Now that you are living again, contact with divine realms becomes limited. When you were only a soul, it was easier. Eric slowed his chewing and glanced down. He didn't want to go. So he turned instead to Ilaria. Thank you, Miss Ilaria Nightshade, for everything you've done for me. She smiled gently. You're welcome. Vesuki leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Have you noticed more scales in your body lately? Eric nodded with a mouthful of food. She poked his cheek. Those are part of you now. Unlike the first one I gave you, which was a piece of me, these new ones are born from our bond. They can be shared. Anyone you give one to may receive my blessing, or, if they're more aligned with someone else, another cosmic power entirely. Eric blinked. But how are they made? Vesuki lifted him onto her lap, speaking calmly. They grow from the heart. Not just physically. I don't mean the muscle, though it begins there. I mean the center of you. Who you are. The more you grow, the more they appear. Can I give them to anyone? He asked. You can, she said. But the result isn't in your control. Your gift opens a path, but where that path leads depends on the other person's spirit. Ilaria watched them quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Eric looked so at peace in Vesuki's arms. She wanted to play with him too, maybe even hold his hand or ruffle his hair. I'll be able to visit more often one day, Vesuki added, brushing Eric's hair with her fingers. If your connection grows strong enough, I might even gain a form in your world. She kissed his forehead. But for now, you have to return. The light around them began to fade. You could have let me play with him too, Ilaria muttered, puffing out her cheeks. Vesuki laughed. Next time. I promise. After returning to the real world, Eric looked down at the ground for a moment and then looked up at the statue in gratitude. Thimril just stood to the side, he seemed to know what had happened. Simon was walking down the hall of Gringotts Bank on business when he noticed the looks the goblins were giving him. The usual expressions, as if he were a fat cow walking into the lion's den, had changed. Now they showed shock. As he approached the head receptionist, he said, "The Hawthorn seat wishes to make a deal with Gringotts." The goblin looked up, pretending to notice him only then, a little trick goblins used to show they didn't hold wizard lords in high regard. But as soon as the goblin truly saw him, his pupils shrank. It seemed he hadn't noticed the sword at Simon's side before. The goblin's demeanor changed instantly. "Welcome, my lord. Let us discuss your business in a private room." He stood up and led Simon to a luxurious private chamber. Snacks and tea were brought in. The goblin bowed slightly. "Allow me a moment as I bring someone of higher standing to help in the discussions." He walked out calmly at first, but once he thought he was out of Simon's view, he started running. Simon chuckled in the quiet room as he sipped his tea. "Good tea," he muttered. He didn't have to wait long. The earlier goblin returned with Zargrin Ironquill, director of Gringotts and High Chancellor of the Goblin Enclave. Zargrin was the highest authority among goblins, the unofficial king. Even the worst of pure-blood supremacists had to show him courtesy. He managed their fortunes. Zargrin greeted Simon respectfully, unable to hide his greed and astonishment as he looked at the sword, though he said nothing about it. "How may Gringotts help Lord Hawthorne?" "I have been importing potion ingredients from India and magical beast parts and wand-making equipment from the US for some time now," Simon said, pausing briefly before continuing. "I will be expanding the venture, and with the help of the Greengrass family, I will export British goods to other magical societies. I want Gringotts to assist with transport and officiate the business. I assume your network will be essential for logistical support of my goods and services." Simon didn't hide much. Goblins might be greedy, but they weren't stupid enough to reveal the secrets of a lord on the level of the Hawthorns. Zargrin didn't even need to think. "Done. And in exchange, I want the sword." Simon looked at him. "No. Know your worth." Simon's aura silenced Zargrin, who chastised himself inwardly for the lapse in control. "I apologize for my outburst," he said through gritted teeth. Simon leaned back. "You will get a stake for managing the books and logistics. These papers have all the finer details. Don't try to negotiate, I'll just walk out." Negotiating with goblins was like swimming upstream. Simon came prepared. The deal was generous, and Zargrin, though unhappy about losing control of the conversation, accepted it. "The terms are well thought out and agreeable, Lord Hawthorne. Our representatives can iron out the finer details." Simon nodded, but only after securing Gringotts' official stamp on the document. "I do have a request, if the kind lord will indulge me," Zargrin said. Simon knew what was coming and drew the sword, placing it on the table. The goblins were surprised to be seen through but recovered quickly, examining the sword as if nothing else mattered. "May I touch it?" Zargrin asked. Simon nodded. After a while, one of the goblins looked up. "How?" There were a million questions in that one word. "The greed of your kind has blinded and stagnated you as a species," Simon replied. "This is the result of goblins who don't hoard knowledge, but share it. Goblins I respect and trust." He didn't linger after that. Later that evening, back at Hawthorne Manor, Simon returned home quietly. The soft click of the front door didn't go unnoticed. Edwina looked up from her reading chair by the fireplace. "Back early," she said. Simon hung his coat by the door, then placed the sheathed sword gently on the stand beside the mantel. "It went well." Edwina raised a brow. "Did it?" Simon walked over and sat across from her. "Gringotts is on board. Logistics, accounting, the whole network. It's official now." She gave a slow nod. "And the sword? Did they ask?" Simon smiled faintly. "Of course they did. Zargrin himself." Edwina laughed under her breath. "And let me guess, you told him no in the most Simon Hawthorne way possible." "I reminded him to know his worth," Simon said, eyes calm. "Then I let them hold it. That shut them up." Edwina leaned forward, elbows on knees. "And what did they say?" Simon shrugged. "They asked how. Edwina studied him. "You told them." "I told them what they needed to hear. That greed has stagnated them. That not all goblins hoard. Some share. And those are the ones I trust." She smiled and reached out to squeeze his hand. "You really do walk into every room like you own it." "Not every room," he said, lacing his fingers with hers. "Just the ones that matter." She stood and walked behind him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders from behind. "I'm proud of you." Simon exhaled, letting the day fall away. Eric's going to change the world one day. I just have to make sure the path stays clear. And I'll make sure he doesn't lose himself along the way, Edwina whispered. A/N, the next chapter will be the final one before the Hogwarts arc. I hope you like the stories so far. I wanted to establish Eric's parents as key figures and not just side characters. As Simon said, he will be cleaning Eric's path some time now. Stones and comments people, that's how you get laid. Chapter 14, Before the Train Arrives. Years had passed, and the Hawthorne family had only grown in prosperity and strength. Eric had matured a little, though his playful spirit remained very much intact. Thanks to the regular use of the Moonblood resin potions, both Simon and Edwina appeared younger than their years. The potion seemed to fundamentally alter one's essence on first use and continued to enhance magical and physical vitality with each dose. As a gift, Eric had given a divine scale to each of his parents. Edwina had immediately received Vasuki's blessing, while Simon had been chosen by Makara, the divine sea beast with the head of an elephant and the body of a crocodile. Even Nibbin had received the potion. His posture was straighter now, his movements more graceful. He'd even been given a series of butler-style suits to wear, something he wore proudly. He considered himself free already, and clothes, to him, were simply fashion. Today was Eric's 11th birthday, and the party was extravagant. Guests arrived from all parts of the magical world. Representatives from the Beast Reserves Simon managed in the US, and relatives from Edwina's clan in India, were among the first to arrive. Right now, Eric was being cornered by a group of aunties from Edwina's side, who were affectionately assaulting his cheeks with pinches. Eric tried to keep a brave face and shot a desperate look at his father, who very pointedly ignored him. I will have my revenge, he thought with narrowed eyes. What can I even do? Simon thought helplessly. Soon, the Knott and Malfoy families arrived. The green grasses were already there. Daphne and Astoria had greeted Eric earlier and were now happily poking at him like he was some magical plush toy. Lucius Malfoy entered with a swagger, a flashy goblin-forged sword strapped at his hip. Runes were etched across the blade. The quality was decent, and Lucius wore the smug grin of a man who thought he was walking perfection. The goblins who'd worked with Eric, though, would have been unimpressed. All this time and you're not even close, they would have scoffed. Eric and Draco still maintained a strong friendship. Draco had long stopped repeating the prejudiced nonsense he'd grown up hearing. Eric had even taken him to watch Tim Burton's Batman, which had left a mark. Why don't we have things like this? Draco had asked. Because your dad thinks muggles are stupid, Eric had replied with a grin. Later, Simon had even invested in Warner Brothers, helping prevent several idiotic decisions that would have haunted the company. The boy has reached 11, the age of magical maturity. Why don't we celebrate with a duel? The suggestion, surprisingly, came from Lucius. Friendly duels were traditional among noble families, especially during coming-of-age ceremonies. Lucius turned to Simon, clearly intending a challenge. Simon raised an eyebrow. It seems Lord Malfoy wishes to test his new sword. I accept. What will be the rules? Lucius grinned. Swords and wands. Like the true-blooded nobles we are. In the mansion's garden, Simon wordlessly conjured an arena with a few elegant waves of his wand. Lucius was capable of the same, but Simon's effortless precision made him raise a brow. They entered the ring and bowed. Lucius drew his wand from his cane. Simon activated the mechanism on his holster, and his wand smoothly slid into his palm. Lucius struck first, sending a volley of stunners, disorientation charms, and a slicing hex toward Simon. Simon calmly dodged, countered the hex with one of his own, then bent his knees and launched forward, sword drawn. Their blades clashed with a loud clang. Lucius staggered slightly and swung again, mixing the motion with a leg-binding jinx and a downward sword arc aimed at Simon's chest. Simon sidestepped, parried the sword, dodged the jinx, and sent Lucius stumbling with a wind knockback charm that knocked the air from his lungs. Though holding back significantly, Simon grew to admire Lucius a little. The Malfoy patriarch kept his chin high for a reason. Lucius regained his footing and fired a conf Ringo. Simon, smirking, slashed at the spell mid-air, deflecting it cleanly, causing gasps from the crowd. With a precise leg locker curse, Simon closed the distance, disarmed Lucius, and placed his wand at his throat. Lucius sighed in reluctant defeat. Simon helped him to his feet, and they bowed respectfully as the audience applauded. Narcissa fixed Lucius's robes while Lucius kissed the back of her hand, sharing a smile with his wide-eyed son. Simon stepped down, kissed Edwina, and ruffled Eric's hair. "Thank you for the duel, Lucius. I admire your strength." "And I yours," Lucius replied. Draco, Eric, and the Green Grass sisters laughed and played the rest of the evening. Later that night, a snowy owl arrived, carrying a parchment envelope sealed with red wax, the Hogwarts crest pressed into it. Simon opened it, and they all read it together. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sork, CHF Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeet of Wizards. Dear Mr. Hawthorne, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. First-year students will require uniform, 3 sets of plain black work robes, 1 plain black pointed hat, for day wear, 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar, 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. That night, the family celebrated joyously, though a faint melancholy hung in the air. Their son would be leaving home soon. The next morning, the Hawthorns headed to Diagon Alley for Eric's school shopping. They visited Madame Malkin's, where Eric got 4 sets of robes enchanted for comfort, temperature control, and minor self-repair. He also purchased a light brown owl, which he named Dune. But the stop he was most excited about was Ollivander's. "Welcome, child," said the wand maker, measuring Eric and vanishing into the back. Half an hour later, the shop looked half destroyed, and Ollivander looked utterly thrilled. "Would you consider a custom wand?" Simon asked casually, fixing the damage with a wave of his wand. Ollivander's eyes sparkled. "It would be an honor." Edwina gently stopped him before he could begin pulling out stock wood. "Try these," she said, offering a moonlight-infused piece of serpent wood and a basilisk scale, both soaked in essence drawn from the Celestial Gourd. Ollivander was speechless. "These are exquisite. The kind of materials wand makers dream about." He held them with reverence. 3 days. 70 galleons. Though he would have done it for free. They agreed. After a few more stops and a round of ice cream they returned home. Chapter 15, Pole. His house. 1 bird house. 2 lion house. 3 snake house. 4 badger house. Waifu. 1 Luna Lovegood. 2 Fleur. 3 Hermione. 4 suggestions. Opinions for you guys. What should be his next ritual? Anything you may want to be added to the story, comment here. Chapter 16, The Start of Something Greater. A/N, thank you for everyone who commented and voted. Ravenclaw won the house vote. You guys don't like Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, hey? I could have done something interesting with Hufflepuff, but I would have to add some OC characters which I want to keep at a minimum. I'm still thinking for the FMC though. And guys, where are the stones? This simply won't do. Shower me in stones and watch me dance, people. Enjoy the longest chapter till now. Edwina sat by the hearth, Eric's school robes folded neatly across her lap. Her wand moved in slow, deliberate strokes, tracing faint silver runes along the seams, charms of warmth, resilience, and quiet protection. Her brow was furrowed, but her hands were steady. Simon leaned against the nearby doorway, arms crossed as he watched her work in silence. "You've gone over every seam twice," he said gently. "I'm not just stitching," Edwina replied, not looking up. "A few comforts. A few wards. Nothing too noticeable. Just enough to keep him safe." Simon stepped forward and gently took her hands, stilling them. She met his eyes. "He'll be all right," he said. "You've taught him more than most learn in a lifetime." Edwina hesitated, then leaned into his chest with a sigh. "I know. But he's still my little boy." Simon held her close, his voice low but steady. "He's your boy and our son. He's strong. He's ready. And he'll do more than all right. He'll make his own mark." At King's Cross Station, the Hawthorns moved as a family of 4, attracting curious glances from Muggles. There was something unmistakable in their bearing, refined but unforced, like they belonged to another time. Simon's rune sword hung at his side, invisible to Muggle eyes thanks to layered concealment charms. Ministry personnel on site worked harder than usual to ensure the noble-looking group slipping through a brick wall didn't cause a scene. Harry was with them, dragging his trunk and glancing between the Hawthorns with an expression caught somewhere between awe and gratitude. At the platform edge, steam billowed from the scarlet engine of the Hogwarts Express. Edwina knelt before Eric, brushing a strand of hair behind his ear and murmuring a final list of things to remember. He nodded along with quiet patience, even as she whispered, "Don't get into fights. And if you do, don't hit girls." Harry wasn't sure he was meant to hear that part, but it made him grin. Edwina turned and hugged Harry too, more warmly than he expected, whispering something that made his eyes go wide before softening into a smile. Simon gave each of them a firm, encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Right home," Edwina said, straightening her robes. "We'll be seeing you soon enough," Simon added. The boys nodded and turned toward the train. As they approached, Eric spotted the Greengrass family. He raised a hand. "Daphne." Daphne turned, her face brightening. "Hi, Eric. Let's go together." She quickly hugged her parents. "Bye, Mum, Dad. Love you." Then she joined Eric and Harry as the three stepped aboard. The corridor was packed, students dragging trunks, owls hooting, cats escaping their cages. Prefects barked orders in vain as chaos reigned. "Everything's full," Harry muttered after glancing into yet another crammed compartment. "We'll find something," Eric said calmly. "Worst case, I conjure a bench in the hallway." Daphne shot him a sideways glance. "We are not sitting in the hallway like vagrants." Eric smirked. "Then let's hope this next one works." He stopped at a compartment with only one occupant. Inside, a red-haired boy sat alone, finishing a sandwich and lazily brushing crumbs off a snoring rat sprawled across his lap. Eric knocked once, then slid the door open. "Mind if we join you?" The boy looked up, startled but polite. "Nah, go ahead. Plenty of room." They stepped inside. Daphne claimed the window seat, primly adjusting her skirt. Harry sat across from the redhead. Eric dropped into the middle seat, looking right at home. "Thanks," Harry said. Everywhere else was packed. "No problem," the redhead replied through a mouthful. "I'm Ron. Ron Weasley." "Eric Hawthorne," Eric said with a nod. Ron blinked. "Hawthorne? That's a name I've heard. My dad's mentioned your family. Said something about international trade, old estate lines, and well, stuff I didn't really follow." "Something like that," Eric said, amused. Ron turned to the others. "And you are?" "Harry," Harry offered. "Daphne Greengrass," she said, polite but reserved. "Nice to meet you," Ron replied quickly, sitting up straighter. "Guess you all know each other already." "We met over the summer," Harry said. Ron nodded, trying not to seem too out of place. That's Scabbers, he added, nodding to the rat. He was my brother's. Doesn't do much except nap. Harry peered at the rat. He always sleep like that. Pretty much. Sounds ideal, Eric said. Ron grinned. I'd trade him for an owl, though. You've got older brothers at Hogwarts? Harry asked. 5. Fred and George are third years. Percy's a prefect. Charlie and Bill already graduated. I'm the last one. Quite the crowd, Daphne murmured. Must be hard making your own name. Ron gave a small shrug. Yeah. I'm used to it. A knock came at the glass. The trolley witch appeared with her cart. Anything off the trolley, dears? Ron glanced down at his squashed sandwich. I'm good. We'll take a bit of everything, Eric said, already reaching for his pouch. Soon, the bench was loaded with sweets, pumpkin pasties, chocolate frogs, cauldron cakes, and every flavor beans. Eric handed them out without fuss. Ron blinked as a chocolate frog landed in his hand. You sure? Take it, Eric said. Thanks. They chatted as the train rumbled on. Eric demonstrated a small floating charm on a chocolate frog, making it hover just above Scabbers' nose. The rat twitched once, then rolled over in protest. You're going to make him throw up, Ron laughed. Just checking his reflexes, Eric said with a smug grin. The mood in the compartment had shifted lighter, easier. Even Daphne had relaxed, sipping a bottled pumpkin juice as she read the back of a Bertie Bott's box. Then the door slid open. A girl with bushy brown hair and an eager expression peered inside. Her robes were already on, and a slightly bulging satchel hung off one shoulder. Sorry, have you seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one. No toads here, Harry said. Haven't seen one, sorry. Ron added. Oh. Right. She lingered. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. I'm Harry, there are Eric, Daphne and Ron. Harry replied politely. Hermione's eyes widened as she locked on to Harry. You're Harry Potter? I've read all about you. The boy who lived. It's in modern magical history and... Harry looked like he wanted to vanish through the seat. Eric gave her a look that said, ease off. Hermione blushed at her outburst and as if to brush that away she continued, that was a nice levitation spell you were performing there. She then hurried off to hide her embarrassment. Ron's eyes widened too as he looked at Harry, seemingly recognizing him from Hermione's outburst. Don't start, said Eric with a grin, looking at Ron's reaction. Making the boy choke on his coming words. The group laughed at that, even Daphne has a smile. The train came to a halt, steam hissing as students stood to gather themselves. We're here. Leave your trunks, they'll be taken up. Harry, Eric, Ron, and Daphne stepped out onto the dark platform, joining the cluster of first years near a large man holding a lantern. First years, this way. Hagrid called. They followed him down a sloping path toward the lake. Dozens of small boats floated near the shore. No more N4 to a boat. Hagrid shouted. Harry, Eric, Ron, and Daphne shared one boat. A quiet breeze passed over the water as the boats moved on their own, gliding toward the castle. No one spoke much. When they reached the other side, they climbed out and followed Hagrid up a narrow path. The castle loomed ahead. Wait here. You'll be sorted soon, Hagrid said, before knocking on the doors. They opened slowly. Greeting them was a stern face of one Professor McGonagall. Welcome to Hogwarts, she said crisply. I am Professor McGonagall. In a few moments, you will enter the Great Hall to be sorted into your houses. Your house will be your family while you are here. Please wait quietly. She turned and disappeared inside. Ron leaned over to Harry. House with the least trolls, hopefully. Eric smirked. No promises. Daphne gave them both a glance. Just don't embarrass yourselves. Eric, it's nice to see you finally. Draco entered the chat. He then noticed Harry and remarked, I had Harry Potter was around. Nice to meet you, I am Draco Malfoy. I hope we can be friends. Yeah right, said Ron from the side. Oh no, it's a Weasley, please don't throw rubber duck at me, said Draco in mock fear. He has improved but he is not a push around. Just as Ron was about to retort, McGonagall returned. Follow me. They entered in rows, the tall doors swinging shut behind them. The great hall was wide and long, filled with enchanted candles floating in midair. 4 long tables stretched across the room, upper years already seated and watching with interest. At the far end sat the staff, a golden hat placed on a small stool in front of them. The first years came to a stop as McGonagall stepped forward, parchment in hand. When I call your name, come forward and sit. The sorting hat will decide your house. She called the first name. A hush fell over the room. They watched as each student stepped forward, the hat placed on their heads, the hall reacting with claps or cheers depending on the house called. Eventually. Green grass, Daphne. Daphne walked calmly to the stool and sat. The hat took only a moment. Ravenclaw. She nodded and stepped down, joining her house at their table. Next came a few more students before. Hawthorne, Eric. There was a slight murmur at the name. Eric walked with quiet confidence. The hat barely touched his head before it spoke. Ravenclaw. Eric gave a small nod and stepped down. He just ordered the hat to do so. The hat keeps the opinion of students in mind and Eric did not let it read his mind. Potter, Harry. The hall went nearly silent. Harry approached, nervous but composed. The hat sat on his head a little longer this time. Gryffindor. Loud cheers erupted from one table. Harry walked toward it, glancing back at the others for a brief moment. Weasley, Ronald. Ron almost tripped on his way up. The hat hesitated, then. Gryffindor. He let out a relieved breath and jogged over to sit beside Harry. From their new seats, each of them exchanged quick glances across the room. The sorting was over, but something deeper had begun. The food appeared. And Hogwarts welcomed its newest players. A/N, I rushed the last part but I hope you still liked it. Anyhow, I welcome the comments and suggestions. Stones people, stones. Chapter 17, First Class. School life was simple for Eric. He settled in quite nicely. Eric caught the attention of Professor Flitwick in his first class and made quite an impression on the professor. Potions classes were with Slytherin. Snape entered with his usual gusto and began his speech. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making, he began. As there is little foolish wand waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. Eric rolled his eyes at the speech but knew what the guy said was true. Simon was a potion master, and Eric had seen bizarre potions wizards were capable of making. All those things were possible if one was good enough. Snape clearly favored his house, deducting points from Ravenclaw students for the smallest mistakes and ignoring errors from Slytherin. Have you done anything involving responsibility in your life? I am wasting my time on you dunderheads trying to teach you how to make potions. He was berating a Ravenclaw girl for a small mistake. She was on the verge of tears. How about instead of insulting and demeaning someone who cannot speak back to you because of your position, you actually use your words to teach her? Eric could not bear to listen anymore and spoke up. Snape's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile. Tell me, Mr. Hawthorne, do you often mistake arrogance for intellect? Or is it simply that you believe your family's name grants you the right to challenge authority? He stepped closer, voice dropping into a near whisper that carried across the silent classroom. You presume to lecture me on how to conduct my classroom? On how to deal with incompetence? He flicked his wand, and the cauldron nearest to Eric stilled instantly. Perhaps next time, you would like to take over the lesson and teach this dunderhead how not to confuse crushed snake fangs with moon seed. He straightened. 5 points from Ravenclaw for insubordination. And I suggest you keep that silver tongue in check, Hawthorne, unless you'd prefer I test the limits of your courage and your grades. Eric's expression remained calm, but there was a quiet fire behind his eyes. I wasn't lecturing you, Professor, he said evenly. I was asking you to teach, not belittle. There's a difference. Around the room, students held their breath. Daphne, across the table, gave Eric the barest shake of her head but didn't look away. Snape's eyes narrowed further, his voice now like ice slicing through glass. 10 points from Ravenclaw, he said softly. And a detention. He turned his back with a swirl of his cloak, but there was no satisfaction in his posture, only something darker, unsettled. Eric said nothing more. He simply returned to his notes, back straight, face unreadable. Snape did not bother the kids after that and even answered some of the students' questions. They were making boil cure lotion. One of the ingredients was cowbane essence. Professor, I hear cowbane essence is used as a magical pest repellent too. What is it most useful against? Eric asked. Snape answered, doxy swarms and niffler digging. Eric grinned and replied, thank you, Professor. It's clearer now that you've explained it properly. A sour expression appeared on Snape's face, but he couldn't do anything. Thank you for helping me, said the Ravenclaw girl, Alice Marwood. Eric smiled at her. You are welcome. How about the hero enjoy detention now, sneered Snape as he appeared behind Eric. Sorting out spoiled potion ingredients should do. Eric did not protest in detention and did his work diligently. Snape checked students' homework and then began brewing a potion. Later, Snape stepped out, saying, you have 15 more minutes, then you may leave. He didn't wait for a response. Eric looked at the potion Snape was making. It was elixir of mind fire. Snape was even using phoenix ash, an optional ingredient used to increase its efficacy. Right now, it was boiling and would need to boil undisturbed for the next half hour. There was one thing Snape hadn't considered, though, thought Eric. The phoenix ash is pushing the burn rate too hard. It'll overshoot clarity and begin to distort. This was a basic lesson taught by Simon to Eric. And though Snape was a master potioner, even masters overlooked basic lessons. On the nearby ingredient tray, his eyes caught sight of an unopened vial. Mind Shade Stabilizer. Subtle, rare, not usually added, but it could buffer the burn phase. Bring the potion to clarity without compromising potency. Eric lowered the heat slightly with a silent cooling charm. Then, 1 drop of stabilizer. No flash. Just a subtle shift, the fumes cleared, the potion steadied. He returned to his work. Snape came back minutes later. He stopped and stared at the cauldron. A pause. Then a charm. The potion glowed stronger than before. He said nothing at first. Then, without looking at Eric. You're done. Leave. Eric packed up. At the door, Snape spoke again. Next time, don't touch my cauldron. A beat. Unless you intend to finish the brew better than I did. He didn't turn. Just added. 10 points to Ravenclaw. Eric gave a nod. Understood. And walked out. Daphne was waiting in the common room. How was it? She asked. Eric shrugged. Less painful than expected. Learned a bit. Improved his potion. She blinked. Wait, you what? He was burning it too fast. Phoenix ash needs buffering. I fixed it. You're insane. I'm practical. She smirked. If you're done risking your life, can you help me with charms? Only if you follow me first, Eric replied, standing. He grabbed her hand and tugged her along. They entered the 7th floor, in front of the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy trying to teach trolls ballet. Daphne chuckled at the painting, but then saw Eric pace around the wall and grew confused until a door appeared where the wall had been. Come in, Eric beckoned. She followed Eric inside and was surprised to see a room full of books and a practice area. It was the perfect room for practicing charms. My dad told me about it, Eric said. He found it when he was studying at Hogwarts. I didn't believe him at first and thought he was messing with me. Seems he wasn't. He was lying. He knew about it because he was a reincarnator. Daphne was surprised. So this is the secret charms practicing room. Eric clarified, it will mold to your tastes. When you're pacing that wall, just think of what you want the room to be. Come in. Let's practice. Eric helped Daphne with the charms she was struggling with. He then copied some books that weren't in the library or syllabus and gave one copy to Daphne. You can't take the books out. You'll have to copy them. This charm will help you copy a book to a blank one. He then taught her the Scribblifer's Replicata spell. A/N, Thoughts and Stones my people. Chapter 18, The Serpent Below. Quirrell was a stuttering, garlic-smelling annoyance for Eric during Dada classes. So Eric would just bring his own books into class and read from them, ignoring the man, and never once did Quirrell chide him for it or even seem to notice. Daphne would also just sit with Eric and study the books she copied from the room of requirement and even practiced a spell in class once, distracting the class. But after a moment, Quirrell just continued his lecture. On Halloween night, Quirrell stumbled inside, his turban askew, face pale and drenched in sweat. He staggered toward the staff table, clutching the edge for support. Troll, he gasped. In the D-dungeon. Troll in the dungeon. A ripple of gasps and shrieks went through the students. Then Quirrell added, almost fainting, thought you ought to know. And with that, he collapsed in a dead faint on the stone floor. Eric's eyes widened and a thought came to his mind: Hermione. He chastised himself for his carelessness and sneaked out from the commotion, running toward the girls' bathroom. He heard a commotion in a girls' bathroom and ran towards it. Hermione was about to be clubbed to death when Harry jumped at the troll and Ron distracted it. Eric sent a small stunner at the beast to get its attention as Harry and Ron were pushed to the side. Eric looked at the troll defiantly and raised his wand as the troll charged toward him, but Harry got hurt trying to stop the troll, hoping to help Eric escape. Seeing this, Eric got angry and sent a powerful severing charm at the troll. Even with its resistance, it had a major wound on its chest as it roared in pain and swung its club at Eric. Eric sent another severing charm at the troll's wrist, took the club in both hands, and swung it at the brute's head, breaking its neck and killing it. What the fuck was I doing? There were a million ways I could have defeated it with ease and Harry wouldn't have been hurt, thought Eric. That was the moment the professors entered the hall. What happened here? McGonagall inquired. Eric explained how he saw Ron and Harry slipping past the crowd and came to inquire about the situation. And then I killed the troll, concluded Eric. The teachers were surprised. Before they could question him further, Dumbledore intervened and asked Snape to tend to the wounds of the boys. I will collect someone to remove the troll's body. And I have a question, he said to Dumbledore. Certainly, my boy, he replied. Why did you ask the students to return to their dorms when the Great Hall is the most protected place for the students and the Slytherin dorms are in the dungeons where the troll was supposed to be? Ignoring the fact that Professor Quirrell is the person who is supposed to teach us how to defend against such threats and is the same person who came running into the hall scared and on the verge of fainting. Snape looked up from tending Harry's wounds. He realized his house was the one most endangered in this situation. McGonagall had a horrified expression too. Dumbledore seemed to be contemplating. You are right, young Eric. This situation was handled in the worst way by me, and I apologize for putting you in harm's way," the old man said, and even apologized to the trio. They were not interrogated further, as that would be just cruel, and they were just kids who needed rest. In Dumbledore's office, there sat 3 people, the headmaster, Snape, and McGonagall. "Albus, Mr. Hawthorne was right in his deduction. We have failed the students," McGonagall said. Even Snape agreed. Dumbledore raised his hand. "Please do not blame yourselves. The fault lies solely on my shoulders. Eric is a young prodigy to have defeated the troll. It seems this year's batch is truly exceptional," McGonagall said. Dumbledore and even Snape agreed. The boy's arrogance knows no bounds, but he made the right deductions. "We should keep an eye on him," Snape sneered. After some more talking, the professors left. Dumbledore was left in the office to contemplate. He sighed and thought, "How foolish was I to have narrowed my view toward only one student and disregard the rest." He hung his head in sadness. Eric was the talk of the school for some time. One day, he was walking through the corridors when Draco approached him. "Hi, mate. How did you manage to kill a troll?" Eric chuckled and said, "All the time I told you to train with me. If you had agreed, you would have been able to do it too." Draco scoffed and did not ask many questions, choosing instead to just chat with Eric and catch up with his friend. Daphne and the trio joined them. Ron and Draco chose to ignore each other for the time being, as it would only sour the atmosphere. Classes and days went by as Eric, on the second floor, entered Moaning Myrtle's bathroom when no one was looking. He was discreet and cautious as he looked around. He did not see the ghost but did hear a faint sound of sobbing. He knew who it was but did not inquire. He then approached the sink and, after casting a silencing charm around himself, spoke. "Open," in Parcel tongue. The sink came apart and opened into a giant hole. "Stairs," he muttered in Parcel tongue again, and stairs appeared. As he entered the great hall underground, he saw a room at the back. He entered to see an area resembling a ritual site. At the center was a huge snake. The runes around it were green in color and glowing faintly. There must be a life-sustaining and absorbing artifact in the core of this ritual circle that would take the energy from the insects and small animals in the area and feed them to the basilisk. Eric brought out some of his blood in a vial and a vial of moon blood resin, and created another ritual circle around the previous one. He dropped his blood on the basilisk's forehead and the moon blood resin vial on the ritual circle as it was absorbed into it. He then placed some crocodile eyes on the ritual circle. He had asked Nibbin to procure them from a potion ingredient shop for him. He then gave energy to the ritual as the basilisk glowed. This ritual had the effect of curing the basilisk's sanity, granting it a pair of nictitating membranes over its eyes, allowing it to choose the targets of its petrification and enhance the powers of the beast. The snake awoke after some time. "Thank you," it spoke to Eric, nuzzling up to the boy and getting some head rubs. The basilisk had a retractable membrane covering its eyes and the intelligence of an almost 1,000-year-old beast. "Nibbin," Eric called out to his loyal house elf. As he appeared, electricity crackled around him. Nibbin was ready to defend Eric from the basilisk but then assessed the situation and did as he was told. Eric inspected the core of the previous ritual site and found a flower growing at its center. Vitalis bloom, he thought, recognizing it instantly. This was an extremely rare flower, known to grow only where a unicorn had died, and only if the burial site had been watched over by other unicorns for decades. It was a treasure of unimaginable value and embodiment of pure life energy. Kneeling beside it, Eric took out his celestial gourd and carefully poured some of its essence onto the flower to nourish it. "It will be a great gift for Mom," thought the boy, a small smile tugging at his lips. Before leaving, Nibbin has also given Eric some homemade cookies, which he shared with his friends in the coming days. A/N, thank you for all the suggestions and comments over the days. I truly appreciate them, and I am surprised to see comments that want me to help the trio, as from early reactions, the impression I got was I would get some people calling the MC names for helping people. Anywho, enjoy the story and give me stones. Oh. And I realized the poll I did for the FMC was shit, so here is a new one. Daphne Greengrass. Luna Lovegood. Hermione Jean Granger. Fleur. Others. I would appreciate your votes and also suggestions. Chapter 19, Her name is Norberta. /n**** guys, I just uploaded the character pictures of the FMCs in the previous chapter, check them out. Thank you for the support **. Eric had been interacting with Hagrid since he arrived at Hogwarts. He was interested in both magical creatures and plants, and Hagrid was the best source of knowledge and stories on both, plus, he was easy and fun to talk to. Today was one of those days. Eric knocked on Hagrid's hut, holding something rare in his hand. Hagrid, come out. I've got something good to show you. He was holding an ignivine bloom, a magical flower found only in volcanic dragon nests. It was an excellent ingredient for the healthy development of baby dragons. Hagrid opened the door hurriedly and peeked out. Hi Eric, sorry now's not a good time. Bye. As Hagrid began to shut the door, Eric shoved the plant in his face. Hagrid wasn't good at lying. He always tried to end conversations fast just to avoid it. What is it? Hagrid asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Eric grinned. Ignivine bloom. Good for baby dragons. And if you're the one feeding it, it'll be easier for you to tame. Hagrid looked surprised but still hesitant. I can see the egg behind you in that pot, Eric added plainly. I know exactly what it is. Hagrid stepped out, glanced around nervously, then beckoned Eric into the hut. How did ye know? What other egg needs to be boiled? Eric replied. They said nothing more and just waited for the egg to hatch. While they waited, Eric helped grind the ignivine bloom and prepare the other ingredients Hagrid would need. Despite not having much gold, Hagrid's hut was full of rare plants and magical beast parts, crushed fireworm casing, roasted flobberworm slices, giant bone marrow, and more. If he sold even half of it, he might be richer than some noble families. Thank ya, Eric, Hagrid said sincerely. Eric just smiled as a knock came at the door. It was the trio. They managed to convince Hagrid to let them in. Hi Eric, what are you doing here? Harry asked. Trying not to get roasted by a baby dragon. Or arrested. Depends on how loud Ron gets. Eric said with a shrug. Ron just huffed with a laugh. Harry rubbed his head and joined the conversation. He trusted Eric like a brother. Hagrid said a few things he probably shouldn't have, and then the egg began shaking violently. He placed it gently on the table. The egg cracked open and out came a Norwegian Ridgeback, blinking curiously at Hagrid. Malfoy! Ron shouted, spotting him at the window. Eric saw Draco too and gestured. Why are you looking through the window like a creep? You could have just come inside. Draco stepped in and looked around. What are you doing here? Hagrid's a friend. He's taught me a lot and helped me, too, Eric said simply. Draco nodded. It's illegal to have dragons, he added. And I suppose your father will find out, hey? Ron snapped. Draco scoffed. Not unless you babble to someone. A friend of Eric's is a friend of mine. Well, with some exceptions. As the two boys bickered, Hagrid sighed. What should we do now? Thank you, Draco, for not telling your father, but I've never trained a dragon before. It won't be long before we're discovered. Eric pointed at the broth they'd made. Put a drop of your blood and a few strands of your hair in it. It won't work for a full human, but you're a different case. This will bond her to you. Hagrid followed the instructions. The dragon drank the broth, burped once, and curled up in Hagrid's lap already fast asleep. You'll want fireproof gloves soon, Eric murmured. And maybe a reinforced roof. The mood became a little more lighter after that. It'll be easier now. She might grow larger than average, and being bonded like this, you'll probably gain a few benefits too, Eric said calmly. Everyone in the hut stared, awed. Hagrid looked like he was about to cry from joy. What should we name him? Ron asked. Her, Eric corrected. Hagrid blinked, then grinned. Norberta sounds good. Dash. Days passed. Norberta grew fast and obeyed Hagrid well. Eric continued helping where he could. He also came across the mirror of Ariste and saw exactly what he knew he would, his family, happy and whole. Elsewhere, Harry became the new Seeker. Draco told Eric that he only picked up the Remembrall to return it to Neville, but Ron made a few comments, and it turned into a broom race. It was fun, Harry is good on the broom, Drac added. Eric was training hard too. The troll incident had taught him something simple but brutal: finish your enemies as soon as possible. That lesson swift, decisive action echoed in Eric's mind often these days. While most first years were learning how to levitate feathers, Eric was quietly mastering combat-focused theory and refining his magical reflexes. He didn't crave violence, but he knew that hesitation in the wrong moment could mean death. The troll had proven that. When he wasn't training or in class, he was usually in the roar with Daphne. She was a quick learner. He gave her moonblood resin too. She was grateful to him. She actually helped him learn some spells too, like the ice spells his father taught him. He was once chatting with her about them and she helped him with the third level of the spell Eric was trying to learn right now. Norberta, meanwhile, had become something of a secret fifth member of the group. Eric would bring meat scraps or smuggled potions for her diet, and Hagrid gave near-daily updates with proud grins and wagging eyebrows. The bond had worked better than even Eric had hoped. The dragon didn't breathe fire yet, but her instincts were sharpening fast. Eric made a mental note to start preparing Hagrid for her flight stage. One night, as Eric was leaving the hut after a late feeding session, Harry walked alongside him, unusually quiet. "You okay?" Eric asked. Harry nodded, then stopped. "What did you see in that mirror?" Eric didn't pretend not to understand. "My family," he answered simply. "Alive. Happy. I was, home." Harry's gaze dropped to the ground. "Same." There was a long pause. "Dumbledore said it shows our deepest desires," Harry muttered. "But it felt real. Like I could just reach out and touch them." "You can't live in a mirror," Eric said gently. "But you can still move toward that feeling." "That's what I try to do." Harry looked up at him, eyes a little watery but steady. "That helps." "Thanks." They parted ways soon after, but Harry seemed a little lighter the next day. Quidditch became the big distraction again as the match against Slytherin approached. Eric watched from the stands, arms crossed, seated next to Daphne and Hermione. The match itself was chaos, as expected. Flint was overly aggressive, and Slytherins would moke the Gryffindor team from the stands. Harry caught the snitch in the end though, winning the match. After the match, while the Gryffindors celebrated, Eric sat by the lake. He tossed a handful of shredded meat scraps into the water dragon jerky, pilfered from Hagrid's stores. Not because he was hungry, but because he was curious. Something stirred below. The surface rippled again, wider this time, as a massive shape drifted closer. Eric didn't flinch when a thick, glistening tentacle rose slowly from the water, curling once like a question mark. "The giant squid." "You're more polite than most of the things in this forest," Eric muttered. The tentacle hovered, then gently tapped the surface twice, sending out slow waves. Eric reached into his satchel and pulled out a wrapped package, a whole, cold trout charmed to stay fresh. "Hagrid said you like fish." He unwrapped it and tossed it just ahead of the tentacle. The squid caught it mid-fall with shocking grace and sank below. Silence returned for a moment. Then two more tentacles broke the surface, this time resting gently across a flat rock near the shore, almost like an offering of trust. Eric stepped forward. He caressed the tentacles and leaned on them as he sat beside the lake and enjoyed the scenery. A/N, Daphne is dominating right now cause Eric has had the most interaction with her till now. She is good choice too. First year will be coming to an end soon. Thank you for your support, I welcome suggestions. I am thinking of making a Discord so we can chat about the FIC. Stones please. Chapter 20, The Forbidden Forest. Just stop, guys. We shouldn't be out after hours. We'll get detention, Hermione whispered furiously to Harry and Ron. Then go back. We were sneaking out together, you're the one following us, Ron shot back, a little annoyed. Meanwhile, Draco and Eric were also out and about. Why did you challenge Ron to a duel anyway? What are you going to do, throw lumos and levitation charms at each other? Or just go for a traditional fist fight? I'm hoping it's the second one. Eric teased, his tone light. The red-headed git insulted me. I'm not letting that slide, Draco huffed. They reached the meeting point and met up with the trio. I'm sorry for what Ron said, Draco. Let's not escalate this, Harry said. Thank you, Harry. But Ron is the one who needs to say it, not you, Draco replied calmly, like talking to a friend. Ron looked to the side and muttered, why would I? Your dad insulted mine right in front of me when we were just minding our business. He even called us traitors for no reason. I'm not taking back my statement, I stand by it. Draco looked down for a second. He knew what Ron was talking about. He had been there, after all. I still want to punch his face, Draco thought. In the end, he turned to Eric. Please make a dueling ring for us, and watch over the duel. My office should suffice as a sufficient enough venue, came a stern voice from behind. All five present turned their heads stiffly to see Professor McGonagall standing there. Eric noticed a hint of a smile on her face. The five kids sat in front of McGonagall as she scolded them. 5 points from each of your houses and detention for all of you, she concluded after a half-hour lecture. They were taken to Hagrid for detention in the Forbidden Forest by Filch. I'll take it from here, Hagrid told him. Then he looked at the group. Is there any day you five can follow the rules? On the bright side, we didn't have to sneak out to meet you today. It's totally legal this time, Eric said with a triumphant smile. Everyone stared at him like they wanted to hit him. Draco bonked him on the head, followed by the others. Even Hermione jabbed his side. Stop fighting and follow me, Hagrid said after a moment of watching Eric get harassed. Just stick together with me. There've been some unusual things in the forest, and I need to investigate. The five followed Hagrid like ducklings behind their mother. Norberta joined the group in the forest. Good girl. Now lead us to the smell, Hagrid said, greeting her and giving her a few pats. Norberta was now as tall as an adult human and could breathe fire. She led the group to a horrific sight, a dead unicorn lying in the forest, its silver blood pooled around it, while a dark figure drank from its wound. The group winced. Hermione hid behind Eric, not wishing to look at the thing. Eric didn't waste time and pointed his wand at the figure. Chilaria Maxima, he shouted as ice shards burst from his wand, piercing the figure's cloak and even its flesh. The figure screeched and turned into black mist, fleeing. Harry clutched his scar, wincing, and Hagrid steadied him with a hand. 3 centaurs appeared, bows drawn. You mind telling us what that was? Hagrid asked, thinking they might know something. Mars is bright tonight, replied the red-haired centaur. We are not made to meddle in the affairs of humans, the black-haired one added. The pale blonde centaur, however, did reply, someone very stupid drank the blood of a unicorn to stay alive. The other centaurs looked at the blonde one in disapproval as he approached the group. He seemed wary of Norberta at first but calmed when Hagrid told her not to harm the centaur, and she listened. I am Firenze. It is nice to meet you all, the blonde centaur greeted them as the other two departed. The group walked with Firenze for some time, chatting quietly. This is as far as I go. I cannot help you much for now, for it is not time yet," Forenza said, stopping. Eric stepped forward. "Here. This is a gift from some friends, as a thank you." He handed him a circular dial that showed visible stars. Some of the stars would brighten or dim periodically. Forenza's pupils shrank as he looked at it. He was about to say something, but Eric interrupted. "It's from some friends. Take good care of it," he said, then turned back to the group, ending the conversation. "What did you give him?" Hermione asked. "A gift for the help," Eric replied. The kids, exhausted and reflecting on the day's events, returned to their rooms and slept like logs. Eric knew what was about to happen next. Harry would find the Philosopher's Stone, and there would be challenges. He wasn't worried. He knew Dumbledore was watching over Harry, and he would be safe. "I already have everything that stone can give me, and much more," Eric thought. Moonblood resin was the perfect version of the elixir of immortality the stone would produce. It would eventually change the body so fundamentally that aging would no longer be an issue and they wouldn't even need to keep drinking it. And gold? That was the last thing the family needed. After a certain point, money was just numbers. The Hawthorne family had passed that point years ago, even without counting the Nightshade Vault. Eric looked at his wand. "I still haven't mastered Chilaria Maxima," he thought. That was expected. It was a fifth-year spell. No matter how talented he was, he couldn't fully master something that advanced yet. He did, however, have the advantage of being guided by the spell's creator. In the Forbidden Forest, Forenza walked toward his tribe, holding the dial as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Some centaurs glared at him for speaking with humans, but he paid them no mind. He approached the chieftain's hut but was stopped. "State your business," said a black-haired centaur with contempt. "If it's not important, my father won't be wasting time on a human lover." Forenza answered calmly, "It is important and essential for the prosperity of the herd. Please let me pass." After more back and forth, Forenza finally shoved the other centaur aside and called out, "Chief Megorion, I require your counsel. Please grant me audience." A voice replied from within, "Enter." Forenza entered the hut and bowed before presenting the dial. "Please look at this." It was a gift from a human. The chief looked at it with distrust at first, then picked it up and was surprised. "This is a way to communicate with another centaur colony. And to be able to make a device that uses stars to communicate, they must be very advanced." He looked at Forenza with appreciation. "A human gave you this, you say? Sit and tell me more." Forenza nodded and began to explain everything. "How does one communicate with this device?" he asked. "How do you read the stars?" Megorion replied, then explained, "You manipulate the stars inside, move them in a way that was divined. They'll form a message. And that is how others will respond too." Megorion was rough but ultimately fair and fiercely loyal to his herd. "A/N, I have had great response from you guys this past few days, thank you for that. Stones guys, let's get to the rankings." Chapter 21, Sting. A/N, thank you for the rank 10 in power ranking, I appreciate all the support. In the following weeks, Harry had been asking Eric questions, some subtle, some direct, related to the Philosopher's Stone or its creator. Eric had no reason to hide anything, so he answered truthfully when asked. Harry, however, never explained the reason behind his curiosity. Eric never pushed. He didn't pry unless necessary, and Harry didn't wish to involve him in something that wasn't his fight. Eric had been returning to the Chamber of Secrets regularly to provide moonlight essence to the Vitalis bloom. The original plant had now sprouted 2 additional buds, which Eric had planted nearby. All 3 were growing rapidly, a process that normally took decades now accelerated beyond reason. Meanwhile, Forenza and Megorion had made contact with the Astratherian herd, and were surprised at how much more advanced the island centaurs were in comparison. The knowledge exchange proved immensely valuable for the centaurs of the Forbidden Forest, and soon they began exploring a way to meet physically. Instead of using the island's phoenixes, the Astratherian centaurs collaborated with the goblins of Nightshade Island to construct a method of travel. This was intentional. They wanted the Forbidden Forest centaurs to recognize and accept the goblins as part of the larger alliance. Thestrals, being creatures common to both the forest and the island, were selected as the focal point for the ritual. Known for their dark magic and invisibility to those who haven't seen death, most overlooked their incredible magical potential and unique connection to space. The island Thestrals, having long lived under the starlit sky of the Nightshade Isles, had developed a far deeper spatial resonance. This was the key. The Forbidden Forest centaurs created the ritual formation using sacred woods and methods shared by their island kin. A Thestral was placed at the center. The creature remained still at first, but then its body tensed as it sensed the presence of another of its kind far away. Its eyes glowed faintly, and a pulse of power surged through it. Its aura shifted, becoming ethereal, lighter, more fluid. It had changed. A gift from the other side, perhaps. Suddenly, the circle flared with energy. Two figures stepped through. One was a centaur with an imposing frame, his coat sleek and dark, adorned with rune-etched ornaments and ceremonial bands. The other was a goblin, dressed in black, with a slim sword resting at his hip and sharp eyes that scanned everything with quiet intent. The Forbidden Forest centaurs raised their weapons instinctively, wary of the sudden appearance. But Mago Ryan stepped forward and raised a hand. Without hesitation, he embraced the visiting centaur, then turned to the goblin and greeted him politely. The others, startled, slowly lowered their guard. The centaur was introduced as Violian, and the goblin as Grokthorn Blackvein. Violian stepped forward to speak. "I come in peace, and in prophecy," he said, bowing just slightly. "The spiral sky shifts. The threads between our herds must be rewoven." The goblin said little, but his presence alone carried weight. They were welcomed into the village, integrated without resistance. The Nightshade centaurs had come for 3 reasons: first, simple curiosity about their mainland cousins; second, to offer their help; and third and most importantly because they knew Eric Hawthorne studied nearby, and they wished to support him however they could, even far from home. After the introductions, Violian approached the Thestral and observed the changes it had undergone. He placed a hand on its head, and the creature bowed lightly. Then it turned and stepped toward Forenza, nuzzling the blonde centaur gently. A quiet bond was forming. As the school year neared its end, Eric found himself reflecting on everything accomplished. The 3 Vitalis bloom flowers had matured and were stored properly. Their potential was immense, and he was beginning to understand just how rare the opportunity had been. One quiet morning, Eric entered the infirmary. Harry was recovering after the events with Voldemort. Eric stepped in just as Dumbledore was leaving. "Good morning, Headmaster," Eric greeted. "My boy, good morning to you too. I trust you're keeping well," Dumbledore replied with a twinkle in his eye. Inside, Harry lay awake. He smiled when he saw him. "Just can't keep out of trouble, can you?" Eric said. Harry chuckled. "Trust me, I try. My parents invited you over for the holidays. Come with me when they start." Harry blinked. "Tell them thank you, but I don't want to be a burden." Eric raised an eyebrow and flicked his finger at Harry's forehead. "Shut up. I didn't ask." Harry blinked, mist forming in his eyes. He lowered his head slightly, accepting the offer. They talked for a while. Harry explained everything that had happened. Eric simply listened. Some time later, Hermione arrived with a bag of books and questions, as usual. Ron stirred in the adjacent bed. "Did we win?" Ron asked, blinking groggily. Hermione scoffed. "Thanks to your suicidal chess move, yes. You sacrificed me. You volunteered." Hermione snapped. Eric looked between them and added dryly, "You'd make a good knight, Ron. All the personality of a stone horse." Ron groaned. You're not helping. The three of them laughed, and for the first time in days, the infirmary felt a little lighter. 2 weeks passed, the kids had packed their stuff and were in the train waiting for departure in anticipation. The train rocked gently as it pulled away from the station, the soft rumble of wheels on tracks mixing with the occasional burst of laughter from the compartment. Eric sat with his legs crossed on the seat, book resting on his knee but clearly forgotten. Ron was unwrapping a chocolate frog like it was the last one on Earth, while Harry leaned against the window, staring at the trees rushing past with a quiet smile on his face. Hermione, as always, was flipping through a notebook with precise notes from the term, and Daphne sat across from her, polishing her wand with a strip of soft cloth. You know, Ron began between bites, I still think Eric cheated on that potions essay. There's no way Snape gave him full marks without blackmail being involved. Eric raised an eyebrow, not even bothering to look up. I simply didn't insult his hair or his mother in the footnotes, unlike you. I didn't insult anyone. Ron said indignantly. Hermione didn't even look up. You did call his potion swamp sludge brewed by a flobberworm with a cold. Ron muttered, well it was. Harry chuckled. Snape is still glaring at you like you owe him gold. Harry then looked at Eric and asked, your parents still okay with me visiting this summer? They are. In fact, I think my mum's already planning to feed you until you explode. Harry didn't respond for a moment, just looked down at the frog card in his hand. Thanks. Hermione smiled at exchange and added, remember to visit me if you are in the area. As the train came to a halt, the kids departed and looked for their parents. Eric spotted his parents almost instantly as the crowd was giving them appreciative looks, and some people bowed to Simon and Edwina as they would pass by. After bidding farewell to his friends, Eric met up with his parents, Harry in tow. Edwina doted over Eric at the station and gave a hug to Harry, making the boy feel welcome. Simon also showed affection to both of them and they departed home. A/N, first year ended quickly. There were a lot of changes though, and I did not wish to rehash canon as most of you have also seen the movie or read the books. Comments and stones please guys. Chapter 22, Quiet Bonds. Eric woke up with sunlight shining on his face through the window, the best sleep he'd had in some time. After a shower and brushing his teeth, he went downstairs and saw Nibbin preparing breakfast. His parents sat on the sofa, chatting with Harry about Hogwarts and the chaos Eric had apparently caused. Oh, I have to tell you what Eric did in Potions CLA, Harry started, but his mouth was shut by a swift hand as Eric appeared beside him, beads of cold sweat forming on his forehead. Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about what Harry was up to, Eric said quickly. Now it was Harry's turn to sweat, clamping a hand over Eric's mouth as the two boys began whispering furiously, trying to make deals. Simon and Edwina watched in amused silence. Harry dear, do continue, I'm very curious, Edwina said sweetly. Eric panicked. Sweet mother, I have a gift for you. Won't you take a look first? Edwina stopped teasing and Eric rummaged through his bottomless pouch, which he kept on himself at all times. Close your eyes first, he said with a grin. Edwina complied. Now open. Eric held a flower in front of her face. Edwina gasped at the sight. A Vitalis bloom, where did you get this? She asked, inspecting the petals. Salazar Slytherin gave it to me, Eric replied casually. But that's not important. Let's show Harry the castle today. Simon and Edwina exchanged glances, question marks practically hovering over their heads, but said nothing more. Breakfast was served as Harry asked about the mysterious castle, with Eric dodging the question playfully. Later, the family explained everything, and Harry was thrilled. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale. They moved to the basement where the ward stones were kept. In one section stood a Thunderbird statue. They placed their hands on it and said, Nightshade. A flash of electricity enveloped them, and they appeared in the castle's porte-cochere chamber where a matching statue awaited, with Thimril standing nearby. He bowed to them in greeting. Harry explored the island in complete awe as Thimril guided him through enchanted groves, glowing ponds, and quiet courtyards. As night approached, Harry stood by the lake near the castle, feeding glowing fish. Then he saw a stag walking across the water, moving toward him. Thimril appeared beside him in a flash of blue lightning. This is a Cultivation or the moonstreak stag. It is a being of light and purity, much like unicorns, he explained. The stag had antlers made of translucent moonstone, veined with silver rune thread. Its brown fur shimmered slightly. It walked up to Harry and gently placed an antler in front of him. They shed antlers every 500 years. Take it. It won't harm the creature, Thimril said as he noticed Harry's hesitation. Soon, the entire Hawthorn family appeared as well. Magical beasts began gathering, basilisks, dragons, phoenixes, all forming a quiet, harmonious scene around them. They spent the rest of the night playing with the creatures and chatting. By the time they returned to the castle, they were tired but deeply satisfied. Later, the family explained to Harry the ritual they had performed using the gifts from the island's magical beasts. They asked if he'd like to try it himself under the promise of complete secrecy, of course. Harry agreed. The ritual was performed, and the antler was absorbed into Harry's body. But something unexpected happened. Harry was a Horcrux. A second partial soul Voldemort's existed inside him. And when the ritual began altering Harry's body and soul, that foreign soul screamed, curled up in fear, and was burned badly. It gave out a silent scream and shrank, hiding in the corner of Harry's magical core. That same core had always been unusually large, a side effect of Lily's protective magic constantly straining it. But it had remained locked at an immature stage due to Harry's inexperience. The ritual broke that barrier. His core advanced to the next level. Magic now coursed through Harry's body without resistance. The constant struggle he'd felt while performing spells was gone. Now, it flowed like an unobstructed river. Eric stepped into the garden with his gourd tucked under his arm. The night was cool, moonlight brushing across the lawn. He saw Harry and Edwina near the far tree, going over basic wand drills, nothing fancy, just steady movements. Harry's grip still needed work, but it was holding better than last week. Nibbin passed by with a basket of snacks, humming to himself, cheerful as always. Eric gave him a smile and turned toward the scene again. He sat on the edge of the porch for a minute, listening to Harry laugh as Edwina corrected his stance again. Simon appeared in the doorway behind him and stepped out with a quiet thud. "You did good helping the boy," Simon said gently. "Was it me?" Eric gave him a side eye at which Simon coughed. "Well, it was my duty." "I am proud of you, Dad," Eric added. "And you, son?" Simon placed a hand on Eric's shoulder and sat beside him. "You know, Harry should also get some training, don't you think? Look how fidgety he is," Eric said slyly. Simon looked at the boy and nodded. He then called out to Harry, "Yes." Harry asked. "From tomorrow onwards you will have physical training with Eric. At 7 a.m. sharp." He then turned and left. Harry looked at the white eyes of Eric and sighed. "You tried to dig a hole for me and jumped in it with me, right?" Eric did not respond and just looked down at the ground. Harry flicked his forehead and went back to practice magic with Edwina. A/N, a short one today. Thoughts and stones, please. Chapter 23, of Mist, Mountain, and Lingering Echoes. I saw many statues adjacent to the statue that is connected to our mansion. What are those for? Eric asked Thimril. You have other properties around the world and it connects you to them. Thimril said and gestured to a certain statue of Azawu and said, this one leads to China. So, if I just go to China, where will I appear? And what if the property that was for me is being occupied by someone else? Eric was excited right now. Thimril shook his head. That doesn't happen, as each of your properties have guardians guarding them. Eric ran off to find his family as he found Simon training with his sword. He just took the man by hand and started dragging him. They then reached Edwina as she was tending to some plants and Harry was near her, by the pond. We are going to China, Eric said bluntly as he gathered the three. Edwina flicked his forehead. Is this your latest prank or something? Eric rubbed his forehead and explained everything. Why begin with China? Simon asked. No reason, I chose at random and I am curious about the Chinese wizarding community as they have the highest Muggle population. That means the highest wizarding population too. The parents thought for a moment and agreed in the end. Well, let's pack, Edwina concluded as they all went to pack their stuff. They all placed their hands on the statue and off they went. Welcome, my lords and lady. I am pleased to present the Frostroot Hollow. In front of them was a woman in white robes. She had pale skin and black hair. As her robe ends, it seemed that it ended in mist, dissipating into the environment. I am Shenlian, a Injun ascendant spirit formed from wind-bonded mountain mist and ancestral guidance magic. Her voice was soft and smooth, and she introduced herself with a bow. Hello, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Can you tell us where we are? Edwina questioned. They were in the hidden plateau at the northern edge of Yunnan, where alpine jungle meets high mountain mist, a cold area most of the year. The house was more like a Chinese-style courtyard. It was huge and had a lake and 15 rooms. We were curious, where is the nearest wizarding settlement here? Eric asked. There is the sacred alchemy sect associated near us. I have a good relationship with them as I am considered the ancestral spirit and guardian of the nearby areas. We can visit them and have a little cultural exchange, if you wish, she explained. How about we go tomorrow? We stay and explore here for today and visit them tomorrow, Edwina suggested. They all agreed and Shenlian prepared food for them as they set up the dining area near the lake. The courtyard was huge enough to house some magical beasts and had a perpetual mist around it that gave it a vibe of being a little isolated from the outside. The magical capacity here was comparable to the Nightshade Castle. A bird then appeared around the family. It had black feathers and was the size of an eagle. It is a Ling Niao, my magical beast companion. She was created by a ritual and has the properties of a phoenix and a spirit, explained Shenlian as the bird stood on the table and the family started playing with it. They had dinner and went out exploring for a little bit as they found they were completely surrounded by jungles, and they saw many magical beasts native to China. The beasts were not attached to the family like in the Nightshade Castle but were docile and friendly around Shenlian, and in turn, they were friendly with the family she was with right now. A/N, very short chapter this one. Thoughts and stones please. Chapter 24, Where Fire Distills the Truth. The Sacred Alchemy sect has a history dating back around 600 years. They are mostly isolated from the wider Chinese magical community and have been researching and developing their own methods and magical means for centuries, even prior to their formal founding, as they integrated the knowledge and ancient bloodlines of their original founders. The founders of the sect are now figures of myth to its disciples. They were three elders who created and studied a completely different form of alchemy compared to the outside world. It is said they were blessed by three ancient magical beasts, one of light, one of dark, and one of fire. These three elements form the foundation of the sect's teachings and alchemical practices. Fire is used to burn away all that is not required and to draw forth the essence, while light and dark are balanced to form the final product. Some products require more light, some, more darkness depending on the materials and intended effects. The sect is located on a mountain adjacent to the Mist Plateau, home to the ancestral mist spirit. One day, as some disciples were patrolling the area, they spotted a lady in white robes. They froze in awe and bowed deeply to her. Alchemy disciples greet the ancestor, one said. Shenlian nodded. Guide me to your elders. The disciples glanced at one another, then back at her, and agreed. At the summit of the mountain stood the great hall of the sect, surrounded by the courtyards of the elders and their direct disciples. Inside, as the elders discussed something serious, a direct disciple entered the hall hurriedly. Elder Huo noticed the young disciple and asked, "What is the matter?" The disciple bowed. "Elder, the ancestral spirit lady of the Mist Plateau has come to visit us." The elders were deeply surprised. They stood at once and rushed out of the hall. Upon seeing Shenlian and the two disciples who accompanied her, they bowed in unison. "We welcome the great ancestral spirit." Shenlian nodded in greeting and beckoned them inside. "I've come to ask something of you," she said once they were seated. "Some great and important figures have come to me and expressed interest in learning about the magical society of China. They are of an ancient and noble bloodline, and I chose your sect to represent our traditions in a cultural exchange. Would that be acceptable to you?" The elders lowered their gazes in contemplation. "We would love to welcome the guests with open arms," replied Elder Huo, the most senior among them. Shenlian smiled. "Thank you for your hospitality. I will return with them in an hour." With a flicker of lightning, Shenlian dispersed into mist and vanished. The two disciples who had escorted her carried some magical beast parts in their hands. On the table lay dragon teeth, unicorn hair, and grapehorn horn shavings. "Should we have told her about the situation of the sect leader?" one elder asked Elder Huo. "No. It is of no concern to the lady and her esteemed guests. And the gifts she provided will be helpful in his situation," Elder Huo replied. He collected the gifts as the two outer disciples bowed and left. "Is there any custom we need to keep in mind when meeting the sect?" Simon asked. "No, just treat them as if you were visiting a foreign noble house," Shenlian replied as they neared the sect. In front of the sect, several elders and core disciples stood waiting to greet them. After exchanging greetings, the elders led them to a banquet hall where a feast had been prepared. Elder Huo and Simon chatted during the meal. "Forgive us," the elder said, "that the sect master could not greet you himself. He is currently in seclusion, honing his alchemy skills." Simon raised an eyebrow but accepted the explanation. After the banquet, the family was offered a courtyard for their stay. "It seems your sect is quite different. I've read that most sects in the Chinese magical society have been relegated to noble families," Simon noted during tea with Elder Huo. "Yes. We remain quite isolated from the outside magical community as well. A treaty forbids outside interference," the elder explained. "Please excuse me, I have some potions to refine," Elder Huo continued. "You said you're familiar with the art. Would you like to accompany me during the refinement?" Simon nodded in agreement, and they departed together. Under ordinary circumstances, the elder would never suggest such a thing. Revealing sect secrets to outsiders would be foolish. But with Simon's background, Elder Huo was willing to share more than usual. Inside Elder Huo's courtyard, he turned to Simon and said, "Our potion refinement methods differ quite a bit from what you may be used to. We use fire as the basis for most of our potion production and alchemical transformations." With a wave of his hand, a blue flame appeared. "Our ancestors found a way to harness and control the flames of magical beings. We use them to refine ingredients." "And what of those that are spoiled by fire?" Simon asked. "That's why it takes years to master flame control," the elder explained. "The most skilled can burn away impurities without damaging the core ingredient." The elder then produced a cauldron and placed several ingredients inside dragon teeth, unicorn hair, and grapehorn horn shavings, the same items Shenlian had gifted earlier. He summoned the flame into the cauldron. After a while, the ingredients began to stir, and more items, myrtlap essence and valerian root, were added. "This is a healing potion," the elder said. "The unicorn hair gives it a stronger affinity toward light. This is the stage where we manipulate light and dark energies around the cauldron to achieve the desired result." 2 hours passed, and a shimmering silver potion sat before them. "This has the potential to revolutionize potion making around the world," Simon said, clearly impressed. "It lowers the number of ingredients needed and the quality is higher. But how does one acquire a beast flame?" "Thank you for your praise," the elder replied. "The flame is only given willingly by magical beasts, mainly those on the verge of death who no longer need them. Our disciples tame and care for salamanders from a young age. The creatures live short lives, so they provide their flames to those who cared for them. A ritual is required for the transfer. My flame comes from a lesser dragon I found in its last days and cared for until the end. The elder spoke with quiet pride. Elder Huo is the most skilled alchemist and potion maker in the sect, more accomplished than even the sect leader. He simply never wished to lead and declined the position when offered. Eric also has a flame like this one, Simon thought, and his seems to be much stronger. This is a great opportunity for him. A/N, I have tried my best to add some lore in the story without contradicting what J.K. Rowling has set up in her story. Tell me if there are any disparities in what I have written, I appreciate your support. Thoughts and stones please. Chapter 25, Bragging Rights. A/N, I've been researching Chinese mythology and culture for this mini-arc, doing my best not to contradict established Harry Potter lore. The next day, Simon explained the potion-making practices of the alchemy sects to Eric, who was thoroughly intrigued by the concept. We can get a flame for you too, Eric offered thoughtfully. Simon considered. Do you wish to reveal your flame to the elder? They've been more than forthcoming with us. I don't think it would cause harm, Eric said after a pause. They were guests of an ancestral spirit, mythical and godlike figures in Chinese culture, and trusted that the sect wouldn't dare cause offense. About the flame, Simon added, I think I already have one. It just needs a catalyst to awaken. Having once bonded with an ancient and powerful dragon through ritual, Simon had focused on learning its ice-based magic, but it was still a dragon, and dragons breathe fire. From nearby, Shenlian spoke quietly. I might have just the thing. I once took a crimson inholotus from a volcano and planted it in the courtyard. It's been nourished by me for the past 200 years. She returned moments later carrying the lotus, deep red, its aura sizzling like living flame. Eric infused it with moonlight essence and offered it to Simon to awaken the dormant fire within him. In Elder Huo's courtyard, the elder sat reading with a furrowed brow. He looked up when a maid bowed before him. Our guests are here to meet you, elder. He nodded. Please, lead them in. Simon and Eric entered behind the maid. Simon smiled warmly and offered a greeting. Good morning, elder. I hope we aren't disturbing you. Not at all, my lord. I would never miss the chance to exchange knowledge with a skilled Podiwaner such as yourself, Elder Huo replied with a wave of his hand. They chatted while Eric sat off to the side, appearing completely disinterested in the chatter of adults. The little lord has a flame too, you say? Elder Huo asked in surprise when Simon mentioned it. Taking the cue, Eric lifted his hand and summoned his flame. The elder examined it with astonishment. This is powerful. Superior, even. And you've such great control. Do those in Britain know how to harvest beast flames, and a superior method at that? Simon chuckled. No. We have unique methods. Elder Huo didn't press further. Would you wish to be my disciple, little lord? I've never had any, but I believe you have great potential, he offered, stroking his white beard. Eric bowed, having learned the custom. I accept, master. Elder Huo nodded, visibly satisfied. I'll provide you with my personal notes and the sect's accumulated knowledge. Study them carefully, and come to me whenever you have questions. A maid escorted Eric to the elder's personal library, guiding him through the resources. Edwina, meanwhile, was immersed in her own studies. The sect's techniques using fire, light, and dark elements for healing offered rich innovations. One of the clan's ancestors had been a powerful Parselveil, and Edwina had learned new spells and methods from that legacy. She was now focused on integrating Parselveil healing and the sect's approach. She, too, would soon acquire a flame. A week passed. Eric's progress in alchemy was astonishing, so much so that Elder Huo nearly pulled out his beard. This took me months to master, and you needed only a day? Sigh. The gods truly are partial, he muttered. The elder, jovial and generous, once familiar with someone, withheld nothing from Eric and bragged shamelessly to the other elders about his disciples' accomplishments. An elder meeting convened later that week. Lady Hawthorne was the best healer we'd seen, but now she is simply miraculous, having acquired a flame and studied our techniques, said the elder from the healing pavilion. And the Lord is a master of sword and magic. I hear he's learning our methods quickly as well, sighed the elder of Flammy Heart Pavilion. Elder Huo huffed. My rebellious disciple is a monster. He'll surpass me in no time. What face will I have left, he lamented in mock indignation. The other elders' brows twitched. Some visibly resisted the urge to smack him. The potion you created for the sect master stabilized his condition, but the poison remains. Should we consult Lady Hawthorne for the cure? One elder asked Elder Huo. I'll ask her for help, he agreed. Today, Elder Huo announced in class, we'll learn the states of matter and how to manipulate them. Alchemy, like transfiguration, dealt with the transformation of matter, though its changes were permanent. We use fire, the elder continued, to weaken the bonds of an object and rearrange them to change its state and structure. Eric listened intently, practicing with focus. Master, Eric asked quietly, do you know of the creation of the Philosopher's Stone? Elder Huo hummed thoughtfully. Yes. It's considered the pinnacle of alchemy, isn't it? It follows the law of equivalent exchange, absorbing death energy to create life and gold. Its creator used the plagues and deaths of his time to forge the stone. He scoffed. But why would anyone choose to grow old forever? Some sect ancestors did seek immortality through similar methods. But there are far better paths like sacred treasures and fire-aligned essence. And with that, Elder Huo launched into one of his famously long lectures. A/N, this chapter was mostly set up. Please share your thoughts. I crafted the method myself, though the concept of flame inheritance is inspired by a Chinese novel I read. Stones please, people, let's climb the rankings. Chapter 26, Nothing Remained. Niben was humming to himself as he cleaned the mansion and worked on its maintenance. He paused and sensed something breach the house's wards and was alerted immediately. With a furious look, he went to check who it was and saw some hooded figures walking through the room, alert and on guard. This is suicide. We are breaking into a very powerful lord's house just for your vanity, one of them spoke. A scoff was heard from the side. Leave then just one less part of the loot. The two who spoke seemed to be the most wealthy of the bunch, as another who seemed to be an underling spoke, my lord, what loot would get your attention? The last thing you lack is gold. The previous person scoffed. Right. It's not gold we are after. This muggle-loving traitor family has a lot of secrets and rare artifacts that can even tempt the goblins into making non-bonded swords for them. And they've been taking over the market of potion ingredients. There are things all the gold in the world cannot buy. Niben was so furious in his hiding place that electricity was sparking around him. There were 5 figures in front of him. He popped in front of one of them and sent out a bolt of electricity, knocking the man back with a scream. The others did not waste time and sent out spells at the house elf. Blood-boiling curse, severing charms, and crucio passed by the elf as he popped in and out, sending electricity flying, hitting the wizards, who used protego for defense and took out daggers with their other hands to throw. One of the daggers grazed Niben as he was late to dodge. He still fought on, using the decorative swords and weapons around the mansion to throw at the wizards. One dagger was lodged onto a wizard's shoulder, and the man screamed. A severing charm hit Niben from the side. Niben popped into the middle of the wizards and discharged electricity from his full body, injuring and knocking them back. A knockback curse hit Niben, sending him flying, and a dagger was lodged into his side. Niben was bloodied and bruised, as he crushed a coin given to him by Eric. He assumed the other one would be with Simon, as it was for emergencies, and if one coin is crushed, the other one shatters too, alerting the holder. Eric had given Niben a twin coin as a gift and kept the other, just intending it as something sentimental for the hard-working elf. He never thought it would be used. But as he felt the coin in his pocket shatter, he panicked. He used the ring on his hand to get to Nightshade Castle, and used the statue to reach the mansion. Thimril tried to talk to Eric, but Eric did not reply. Just as Eric appeared in the mansion, he rushed up to see what was wrong and found 4 wizards wailing on Niben as one stood to the side. A mere house elf dares to attack the pure-blooded. Eric stepped forward and coldly asked, and who would that pure blood be? To dare enter Hawthorne Mansion and harm a family member. The wizards stepped back as they looked at Eric. He had a short sword at his hip brought from the castle and was watching their every movement. Niben looked at Eric, scared. "Young master, please go back and call the Lord." Eric just brought Niben to him and fed him a healing potion he had recently made. "It seems there was someone home, but no matter. Tell us where you keep your valuable treasures and we'll let you and the elf live," the wizard in the most expensive clothes said. Eric wasn't interested in having a chat. Once Niben was safe, he made a fearful expression as if scared of them. The men sneered. He took out his sword with trembling hands and said, "Don't come closer." They laughed and stepped forward. Just at that second, Eric used his telekinesis to launch the sword at one of the men. The sword was lodged in the man's chest, nailing him to the wall. Simultaneously, a whisper came from his mouth in a foreign tongue, 3 a parcel tongue spell cast by forming a seal in one hand and making an M-shaped motion with his wand. As soon as the spell was spoken, 2 of the wizards fell to the ground. Blue faces. Blisters forming. Jaws and fingers clenched as if they were paralyzed. Eyes wide in fear as they opened their mouths, calling for help but no voice came out. "Avada Kedavra," one of the wizards screamed in fear and despair. A green flash raced toward Eric. Just then, a silver flash came in front of him, the flame he'd bonded with. It swallowed the spell and glowed green for a moment. Then the flame raged. It engulfed the stunned wizard, leaving not even ash. 4 adult wizards were incapacitated by Eric in a moment. The last one had already lost an arm in the fight with Niben and could do nothing but crawl towards the wall and shiver in fear, muttering monster under his breath. His comrades were melting, nailed to the walls, or gone. One was as if he had never even existed. No trace remained. Eric looked at the man and stepped closer. The man went limp, regret in his eyes. "Just waiting." "Who are you? Why are you here?" Eric asked. The man answered in a monotone. "I am a member of House Blackmere. I came with my little brother and some lesser wizards to find artifacts here. My older brother the Patriarch met your family at a party and told us about your immense wealth. They were just foolish men, playing foolish games." Eric nodded. Put a hand on his chin, thinking. He called forth the flame. It had returned to its original color. The man looked at the flame as if it was his salvation. At least it would be over in moments. Eric threw the flame at him. The man smiled as it reached him. He died without a scream. Nothing remained. A/N, thoughts and stones please. Chapter 27, Old Roots. Eric burned away all traces of the wizards he had killed and repaired the mansion's damage. How did they even get inside? He wondered as he stepped outside to investigate. Near the entrance, he found a golden metal rod covered in glowing runes. The runes pulsed faintly, still active. Eric examined it and realized it had likely confused the mansion's wards just enough to let intruders in. Only Niben, who was magically tied to the estate and enhanced with a power boost, had sensed the breach. Eric tucked the rod into his bottomless pouch for further study, then approached the unconscious Niben. He placed a hand on the elf's forehead and altered his memories of the attack. Eric didn't want his parents knowing he had killed 4 people. Using the ring on his finger, he teleported back to Nightshade Castle. "Are you well, my lord? What happened?" Thimril asked, concerned. "Nothing. Just a false alarm. I'm fine, don't worry," Eric replied, brushing it off. Unbeknownst to him, the mansion's wards had already absorbed the runic patterns from the rod and were now immune to such intrusions in the future. Meanwhile, in the sect master's chambers, Simon and Edwina stood by as Edwina examined the unconscious elder. Her spells revealed traces of poison clearly from a powerful magical creature. "I need privacy to treat him," Edwina said calmly. Only Simon stayed behind as the others bowed and left. She began speaking Parseltongue, moving her wand with precision. Her flame surged forth and engulfed the sect master's body, not harming him but purifying the poison. A thick black liquid seeped out of him, which Edwina carefully collected in a vial. Though her flame came from a salamander, it had been upgraded using the fire Yuan lotus. Combined with the divine essence in her magic, her flame now surpassed even phoenix fire, just like Eric's and Simon's. "Were you off finding trouble instead of studying?" Elder Huo asked dryly, pulling Eric's cheek. "No, Master, I was getting a gift for you," Eric replied, face squished between fingers. The elder released him with a huff and crossed his arms. "What gift?" Thinking he was just making excuses, Elder Huo watched with mild disinterest as Eric pulled out a small red crystal from his pocket. "A fire jade," the elder said, surprised. "Use it for yourself, it'll strengthen your flame." Eric pushed it into the elder's hand. "It's useless for me or my family. Our flames have already surpassed what it offers. You've been generous with your teachings, this is just a token." After a pause, the elder reluctantly accepted the gift. "Your homework is still doubled." Harry, meanwhile, had been quietly learning in the background for the past 2 weeks. He had been given a salamander to raise and cared for it diligently. Though saddened by its short lifespan, Harry focused on enjoying the present. He spent a few hours each day learning minor magical techniques and the rest playing with the salamander. Today, he was tending to a magical horse with sleek black fur larger and sturdier than normal breeds. The salamander, now the size of a cat, munched on glowing blue food beside him. It had a unique mark on its forehead, which was also drawn on Harry's palm, as it is the link that will allow for Harry to gain its flame after its passing, even if there is no way to perform the ritual. After finishing up, Harry met Simon and Edwina in the courtyard. "How was your day?" Simon asked. Harry recounted his day with a cheerful smile, the salamander sleeping peacefully in his arms. The next morning, the Hawthorne family was approached by a disciple of the sect. "The sect master has awakened," the disciple said respectfully. "He wishes to meet the 3 of you personally." Simon, Edwina, Eric, and Harry followed him up the quiet mountain path, flanked by the statues of the 3 sect founders. Inside the summit chamber, the sect master awaited them. Dressed in a flowing white robe, the elder had long white hair, but stood tall and vibrant. Simon's potions had helped speed his recovery. "I welcome the saviors of my life," he said with a faint smile. "We're happy to see you well," Simon replied sincerely. The sect master walked to a table and picked up a wooden box. He opened it and pulled back the black cloth inside, revealing 2 glowing seeds. "These are seeds of the Hong Yulan fruit tree. Only 2 have appeared in the last 1,000 years. Once grown, each tree produces a fruit every 50 years. When consumed, the fruit studies one's ancestral past and awakens any dormant magical traits within the bloodline." The family stared at the seeds in surprise. In a world where bloodlines had long mixed, such a fruit could be invaluable. It might awaken abilities long forgotten, ritual-bound or creature-linked powers that emerged only in rare generations. And with the assimilation of Vasuki's scales, the possibilities were terrifying. "We'll take only 1, Simon said. "The other can serve the section." The sect master respected their choice and nodded, although reluctantly. Eric then stepped forward and offered a vial of moonlight essence. "This will help the seedling you plant grow faster," he explained. The sect master hesitated. "You're only increasing the debt I owe your family." "There is no debt between us," Edwina said gently. "I acted because I could. And we've already gained much from the sect," Simon added. "We've grown by leaps and bounds." The sect master smiled and invited them to sit with him. They spent the afternoon in calm conversation. While the elders spoke, Eric and Harry chatted with some of the sect master's disciples. Meanwhile, Simon negotiated a trade deal offering rare magical beast parts and potion ingredients not available in China. He set the prices far below market value, as a gesture of goodwill. Nearby, a few disciples poured tea for the guests. One leaned close to Eric as they sat in the side courtyard after the formalities. "You're the one who made Elder Huo nearly choke on his own tea from shock, right?" the disciple asked with a teasing grin. Eric blinked. "Which time?" The disciple snorted. "The 3-step purification elixir. You brewed it perfectly on your first try." "Oh, that. Well. I only almost poisoned myself 3 times before that." The disciple laughed and poured him more tea. Meanwhile Elder Huo had also joined the conversation between the sect leader, Edwina, and Simon. "Your method of steeping essence root is unusual. Cold infusion?" Elder Huo asked curiously. They were discussing alchemy and potion making. Simon nodded. "Yes. Slower, but it preserves subtle magic signatures more cleanly." Elder Huo stroked his beard, impressed. "If I were 20 years younger, I'd challenge you to a brew-off." Simon smirked. "Age only makes you more dangerous, not less. Flatter me again and I'll triple your son's homework." Elder Hua said as after that he was praised by Simon and Edwina through the whole conversation. A/N, it took longer than usual for me to write this chapter. Thoughts and Stones. Chapter 28, Flame Bond. The summer vacation was about to end in 1 week, and the family would not get much time to visit the sect, especially the kids, as school was about to start. Simon and Edwina had been going back to Britain frequently as they had duties there. Today, Elder Huo had convinced Simon to give a lecture to the disciples of the sect about British alchemical processes, with the aim of integrating the sect's methods with them. Simon stood on an elevated podium as the disciples formed a semicircle around him. He had a board and a cauldron to teach. He first started by teaching the British method in simple terms. The ingredients used are selected for their magical properties as well as their symbolic meaning in society. For example, plants that are symbols of bonding are used in potions to bind 2 elements together. In your method, the balance between light and dark elements is used for that purpose, reducing the requirement of some rare ingredients but also reducing the potency if the skill is not up to the mark. As he explained the methods, the disciples listened and took notes without making a sound. Eric was also there, learning. Harry was not interested in alchemy, though. One disciple raised a hand tentatively. "Does that mean our methods are less stable?" Simon shook his head. "Not at all. Your approach assumes discipline and elemental sensitivity. Ours relies more on structure and intuition. Both are valid. But when combined, we might cut down on wasted reagents and produce potions more reliably." Edwina, at this time, was with Selene Greengrass in their mansion as they chatted about healing and other topics. "I thought you would have told me by now," Edwina said cryptically. Selene stiffened. "About what?" Edwina sighed. "I know there is someone who needs healing in your family. I won't force you to tell me who it is. I do implore you to tell me the kind of affliction they have, so I can at least guide you in a way that leads you to the cure sooner." Hearing that, Selene looked down in contemplation and told Edwina about a blood curse in their family, and its symptoms and effects on the person's magic. After chatting with Selene, Edwina came back to the sect and was going to her courtyard when she met Harry on the way. She ruffled his hair as she asked about his day, but he seemed to be in deep contemplation. "What is it?" asked Edwina. Harry looked up at her. "How long will Pyrrha live?" he asked. Pyrrha was the name of his salamander. "She will at most live another 6 months." Edwina's response was blunt, but it was what Harry needed at the time. "I don't want her to die. I don't want flame powers. I just want her to stay with me." Harry broke down as Edwina hugged the boy. She thought about it and then said, "Come with me." She took Harry by the hand, and they went to their courtyard. She gave some potions to Pyrrha. These potions will make her healthier and extend her lifespan. I will now upgrade the link you have with her through the marking. And if she accepts, she will be connected on a deeper level with you and live even longer. She used ink made from the blood of a giant and crushed dragon bones to add to the marking on Harry's hand and Pyrrha's forehead. She had asked Shenlian to procure the ink, and as she finished her inscribing, Harry was laid on his bed and fell asleep with Pyrrha in his arms. Later that night, the Hawthorne family arrived at Nightshade Castle to plant the whole Newlawn tree seeds, as Eric nourished them with moonlight essence. The family then went to the ritual room at the top of the castle. They would be performing a ritual to upgrade their wands. The first was Edwina, as she sat in the middle of the circle with her wand in her lap. She had 2 vials with her, one was the poison she had extracted from the sect master mixed with basilisk venom, and the other was a healing potion made from grapehorn horn, unicorn hair, and phoenix tears, mixed with the serpent wood resin potion. She poured both vials into a wooden bowl and placed her wand in between. She then chanted in Parcel tongue and infused her magic and some of her blood into the bowl. The mixture began to seep into her wand as she continued to hold it. It absorbed the materials and gained a faint greenish hue that formed some runes on it. They were faint and hard to spot, but they were there. Simon stepped into the ritual circle next, his face composed as always. Eric and Edwina moved to opposite sides of the room, each lighting the runes that encircled the chamber. Simon's wand was placed delicately in a silver bowl carved with glacier dragon scales brought from a long-ago expedition into the fjord cliffs. Around it, he set his chosen materials. First, he poured a vial of mist essence, given to him by Shenlian. She had condensed it over 100 years. To tie the elements together, Simon added 3 drops of cloud serpent bone marrow, a rare mist creature secretion that deepened magical focus and attunement. Lastly, a fragment of a geyser heartstone, a stone formed from boiling subterranean springs, long since hardened into a fiery core surrounded by mist-veined rock. He placed his palm over the wand and whispered a personal invocation, and also held his sword as the ingredients dissolved in the bowl. His sword and wand both gained blue runes as the essences flowed like water toward them, crystallizing like ice and giving off a faint mist. Simon lifted the sword and wand. They remained the same in length, core, and materials, but the surface shimmered faintly like frost over glass. Veins of soft mist shimmered in the grain, powerful, understated, precise. He nodded once in satisfaction. Eric stepped forward next, drawing his wand slowly. He didn't carry a bowl, he conjured a shallow basin of stone, carved instantly